-1, -2.
Stop counting, Jonathan.
That's not good.
Stop counting. God's sake. All right, welcome, everybody, to episode 86 of Plat Chat, presented, of course, by T-Mobile. This is your regular crew at the moment. We've stolen Avast away. We stole him from Envy, actually. He's no longer with them because he was just making too much money from Plat Chat. Just rolling in the bank because you're all watching the ads.
It was a really unfortunate timing too, because in the last Plat Chat Valorant episode, we had the Envy backdrop and everything, and then right afterwards, it's the last day. So as they say in the business, you just gotta roll. A rolling stone collects no moss.
True.
That's what they say.
What kind of shirt do you have on today?
A sloth with moss on it.
Oh,
so it does collect a little bit of moss, just a tad.
No rolling sloths. Yeah, I'm wearing
what the
this.
fuck is that?
I'm wearing this extremely tight Dallas Fuel jersey.
Yeah, it's not made for wide show.
No, it's not made for wide show. This was made for a very slim, actually, woman. So I'm feeling a little cramped inside of this. It's a Mickey jersey as well.
You should bust out of it.
It's not even relevant.
You should flex. Just bust out of it.
I can't flex because I have no muscles. I can eat more and then I'll bust out of it eventually.
Well, everyone has muscles. It's just underneath, Everyone's got them, else you can't move. You just be a slime,
I mean, sometimes I feel like that, Avast. Sometimes I feel like
you're trying to wear a shirt underneath that jersey too.
Yeah, because otherwise you can see my nipples protruding through the jersey like diamonds. And I don't want to try and cut the screens of the people at home. So I thought, I'll wear a t-shirt underneath.
Why are your nips so hard for the intro? What's going on,
If I wear things that are very constricting, that are very tight around my body, my nipples tend to get aggravated and they fight back against the environment. And this happens no matter what it is. It's just if I wear tight clothing, my nipples are like, trying to get through it, You don't have that experience?
No?
Maybe you're just into that binding feeling, Like we get you like a latex suit, and that'd be really good for you.
It's like a straight jacket.
Anyway, the reason I'm wearing this is not because I think it looks really fitting on me or anything. It's on Sunday I was watching with my girlfriend, and my girlfriend was a big Dallas Fuel fan. And eventually it was just becoming absurd. So I was like, I was cheering on the Shanghai Dragons. I was pushing for them to win. They had a really close series against them previously. And Beth was like,
why'd you want the Dragons to win?
What, sorry?
Why'd you want the Dragons to win?
Twofold. One, I really like the Dragons. Two, I'm sat next to a Dallas Fuel fan. Of course I want the Dragons to win. I don't want the Dallas Fuel fans' egos to get... they've been nice and quiet for so many years, and they've been humbled. Do you know what happens?
I don't know if they've been quiet. But they have been humbled.
They've been quite quiet. They've been they've been quashed by a cycle of misery.
Very obnoxious.
Bro,
they've been very obnoxious, but they've just been shitting on their own team. Is the thing?
That's fair. Yeah, but that's acceptable. That doesn't touch me because I'm not on their team. Oh. It might touch you because you are associated with Envy. But
no, I was kind of autonomous, I would say. I mean, at this point, they do host watch parties in my old college though, so it was like a double pincer, with that. I mean, it was cool. It didn't touch me the same way as that shirt touches you. Quite the same. This is a very, very deep and close touch the shirt has to me. But anyway, this was part of a bet, and so she said, okay, well, if the Dallas Fuel win, if you're feeling so cocky, you could come on and represent the Dallas Fuel with this Mickey jersey that she had hidden in a closet somewhere. Oh. But I got her back the next day. So yesterday we were at a bar and we were going out for one of the first times. We're all fully vaccinated, so we were going out, and I got a cocktail. And my girlfriend is deathly allergic to wine and anything with grapes in it. And this cocktail had a bit of Pinot Noir in it, just as one of the ingredients. And I said to her, you better not taste this. And then I was drinking it, and we both forgot. And she went, can I have a taste of your cocktail? And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. And so she just had a quaff of that. And so I've essentially poisoned her the exact day afterwards through, just via simply forgetting about what I was supposed to be doing.
Terrible.
So, I know, it's horrific. So that's what I've been working on all day, is trying to make that up back to her. So
because she rooted for the Fuel, you did that.
No.
Yeah,
Let's
I can't
be clear.
believe it.
Let's be clear. No intention behind any of this. We both just forgot what was inside the cocktail. And she asked for a sip.
I'm never rooting against the teams that you pick ever again. Who knows?
So here's the thing. That's the question that I have to you. Who can you trust in these days? Who can you trust? If your own partner's going to be giving you poisoning you at a cocktail bar. Unintentionally, of course. Absolutely unintentionally. Who can you trust? Do any of you guys got any ideas?
My court taste tester, my royal taste tester that tests all my food. Make sure I'm not poisoned.
I mean, there's actually a better answer, though, Avast. And it's T-Mobile. T-Mobile is the one that you can trust. T-Mobile wants to be the best in the world at connecting people to their world. And with so much of their lives these days happening through a wireless connection, nothing but the best will do. We rely on wireless to do almost everything in life, from big deals to everyday connections. So if you can't rely on your network, it can have big consequences. That's why you can't just trust this stuff to anyone. T-Mobile is the largest and fastest 5G coverage in America. With coverage and speed like this, why wouldn't you go with the best around?
It's true. T-Mobile would have never...
If I had just thought to use T-Mobile, I could have, I mean, I didn't actually need T-Mobile at the time because I could have just looked at the menu and saw that it had a poisonous substance in it for my partner, but I'm too stupid, so what can I say? It strikes again.
And T-Mobile has that cool phone in the back.
Yeah, they did.
We have a new phone.
We have a new item on the set. That's
a very strange looking phone.
No,
I feel like
not cool.
What if you carry it around your? How are you going to carry that around your pocket? I feel like you'd have to design a whole backpack.
We should get a bunch of videos, Kirk. Can we get a bunch of videos of Bren just around Austin, just like in populated areas, trying to take calls on that phone, just like holding it up to his ear?
I love that.
And shouting about T-Mobile 5G.
Have you seen? There was a very old sketch show. I can't remember what it was called. It had a guy with an enormous phone. It must have been like a 4-foot-tall phone.
You assuming I saw it because it was old? Are you calling me old?
Yeah. I'm not addressing this question to the Zoomers of the panel. I'm addressing this question to the old man who probably has a 401k and money squirreled away in his mattress because he doesn't trust the markets.
Can't trust them.
Did you ever see it? He's got like a 4-foot phone and he's walking around and he goes into libraries and places that are extremely quiet. And he's just screaming into his phone.
Well, it's a very non-specific question. Like, I mean, there's so many shows that have existed.
Hey, Avast, have you ever seen the ad with the guy with the big phone? Yeah,
I mean,
there it is.
Wow, we found this really fast.
That wasn't that non-specific, was it? That was actually quite specific. What is the name of this?
Big phone guy?
The title of the video is like Trigger Happy TV, but that might be just the YouTube channel. I'm not sure.
I mean, it was on Channel 4 in the UK. I think that was the name of the TV show.
Anyway, how would I have seen it? It was in the UK.
Oh, I don't know. You're a very worldly man. I couldn't say that with a straight face. He's never been outside of his apartment. He has no idea what goes on outside of his tiny little 4 walls.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I have a bunch of walls.
We got stuff to talk about in this show. You got a bunch of walls.
What you got a bunch. It's like a humble brag. It's like I have a lot of walls. I got a lot of walls. Most between me and the rest of the populace. Put up all the walls there from the plebeians.
You are a moron. We had the May Melee this week. How are you feeling at the end of it, Jonathan? Best May Melee we've ever had. There've only been 2 of them.
How many? There's been 2. Yeah. Considering the last one was actually a reverse sweep in the finals. So.
Was it?
Wasn't it?
Oh, you mean for APAC? Yeah.
There were 2 finals last May Melee. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to you about this before the show. I was like, this is one of the best stages ever. It has to be, right? Like, if you had to rank all of the stages in Overwatch League history, this has to be one of the best. Just as the storylines, the matches were bonkers, the format is good.
I just
really liked everything about it. Yeah.
The meta was good too.
The meta was
really
fantastic.
Good. Meta was amazing. Like, honestly, legitimately, we saw a team get 100% win rate with Soldier in a finals.
That is absurd, isn't it,
dude? When we were casting that and he locked the legs, I was like, "This is a desperate attempt here." The legs is like, when we talked about it. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, where it was like, well, everybody should be able to play a little bit of McCree, right? Like, he's like a baseline hero. Like, Soldier is even more baseline. Like, if you don't play Overwatch, you come in and select Soldier 76, and you're like, yeah, I kind of get this. It's like Call of Duty.
Exactly, it's like Call of Duty. Even you guys can play it. So
yeah.
Matt and his friends running around playing Soldier.
Yeah, he was.
When he pulled out the legs on Dorado against Shanghai initially, I was like, what the what the shit is happening here?
A BQB.
And then, yeah, I mean, I can't even remember why he pulled it out in the first place, but that was just like unthinkable at the time. And then Sparkle did it in the finals, and I'm like, what a genius. What a guy. Incredible selection by Sparkle.
Everyone would have predicted they would have held on King's Row with Soldier Hanzo defense.
We'll get to that, but they had like 5.5 minutes or something like that. That was excruciating to watch that attack by Shanghai. Anyway.
Do we have our bracket, Kurt, that Platchat put together? Because it got boomed extremely early on. And that might be a good way to start, right? Is like assessing expectations. No, we don't have it.
We logged into it on an incognito tab.
So. I logged into it on my account, and it's lost to time.
Kurt, show your bracket.
We had,
show yours, Kurt.
We had. I remember though that we had Mayhem beating Shanghai in the upper bracket, and I was.
You guys had Mayhem beating Shanghai?
The other three did, Avast. The other three did, not myself.
No, okay, so explain this to me, okay? Because I actually saw Avast companion stream, and like everyone had Shanghai as well. And I feel like it's been this thing where like I was on one part of Twitter, and you know other people were on other parts of Twitter, and just like had no idea about each other or like people's like discussions, and I was like, how are these people predicting Shanghai? So give it to me. Why did you predict Shanghai Dragons over?
I mean, this team is. If you watch their match versus Fusion, did they papige? Yes, they papiged, but they also are they looked a lot better in that match versus Fusion coming in. Additionally, Mayhem looked like that. Granted, I think you guys underrated Mayhem a bit. People underrated Mayhem, but they still look kind of bad. Like not that good up until like just now when they popped off in this bracket here. Like I was not expecting, because their run into the melee wasn't that like strong. They had a pretty easy bracket. They were able to avoid Houston and Shock, and I think they avoided they avoided Fuel too, right?
Yeah.
So they avoided
Justice.
all those teams. They got to play like Defiant and Justice. Like I feel like I think people were kind of over, like, I don't know. Mayhem didn't look that good coming in. I had faith in Shanghai far more than I did Mayhem when I saw their play, especially when I consider that the APAC is super top heavy currently, while NA and average is like more consistently, like, you know, they have more consistency across it, but I would still consider like the bottom of the region to still be pretty bad, you know? So I felt pretty confident about Shanghai more so than Mayhem coming in.
Well, let's start with Florida then, I think, because the Florida Mayhem did go on a pretty decent. I mean, their deconstruction of the Washington Justice was pretty impressive, I thought, coming into this. But I wasn't quite confident on whether or not they'd be able to pull that off for the long term. How did you guys feel about Florida in this bracket? They didn't go massively deep or anything, but they still did decently well, right? They beat Chengdu. They make it third place out of fourth, but they're playing against elite competition. What do you think? What do you think about them? How's the future looking for the old Mayhem squad?
I think it looks pretty good. I mean, they were competitive against the top. I thought Chengdu would be much better. I think to beat Chengdu is a pretty impressive win for Florida in international competition. I think this is a team that'll kind of contend for more spots in Hawaii, but I think it's a lot like what we've even been saying is I don't know what meta they would be the best in, like the best out of all of the teams, right? Like I think they will be a team that doesn't have many flaws like throughout the year, but I don't think they will have the highs or can reach the same highs as some of the other teams. So I think they'll always kind of be a little bit in this position where they're good enough to get there. They just need to overperform when they get there, which I think when you have a player like Yaki, it's possible.
Their performance against the Dragons was good. Like I mean, well, when I say their performance against the Dragons was good,
God, this wall was pog.
People were losing their mind at the level of play in this game, though, as well. Like, it was real scrappy. It was all over the place. But I think that's something that Shanghai kind of create themselves and impose upon their opponents, because a lot of the games ended up going way off the rails in every game where Shanghai played. So I think with the benefit of hindsight, it really wasn't like... It was still a pretty good performance from Mayhem to be able to take them to 6 maps.
Yeah. Yeah, I think really like when I saw Mayhem coming into the melee and like when they were having to do the knockout stages, their rush looked abysmal, like not good coming in to like melee. Like, and I was worried because obviously this team you're able to play non-rush, but for certain maps it really hurt you a lot to not be able to play a solid, consistent rush. And that was a real problem for Mayhem. Like, yeah, their other comps were fine. I think their double bubble was fine, but they didn't look as coordinated. They looked kind of rough around the edges comparatively to, especially on Rush, like I said, compared to most teams. So I felt just more confident about Dragons. But when they came into May Melee, they looked so much better. Like, honestly, so much better. And they also made their Rush a lot, like, most importantly, their Rush was actually able to get value. And I think that was the big thing for me, is like, I just felt their Rhine comps and the way they played around Rhine before was really bad. And they cleaned it up a lot, because this team was always going to be good because they had like insane pop-off potential with BQB and Yaki and such. So
yeah, I mean, I think definitely there were some nerves in the first matchup against Shanghai Dragons. Like, there were just too many unforced errors. Like, you don't expect that from the Florida Mayhem. They honestly threw this series because they should have won that Gibraltar. But oh my god, that grab and like the pulse bomb from
I mean, that was
and like
all over the place.
I think they should have won this match, but I agree with Avast. I mean, their rush was okay. I remember Albert tweeting out, like, when they beat Washington Justice, were like, people said we didn't knew how to play rush composition. I'm like, yeah, you beat Washington Justice in Reinhardt comps. Like, it's not an incredible achievement. So, but I still felt like they were better than Shanghai at those type of compositions. I just thought that Florida Mayhem's Winston compositions were going to beat Shanghai Dragons, because I felt like Shanghai Dragons relied a lot on Mercy's and Yara comps against Philadelphia Fusion, because Fusion plays slow. And so I feel like they got away with playing Legic on a lot of Mercy. But I mean, I didn't like the tank play from Florida Mayhem in that initial matchup. Like, Ilios, OG looked out of it. Then on Gibraltar, like, struggled again with getting dives going. They just seemed out of it, really. So I don't think that this was the best performance from Florida Mayhem. Like, they didn't show their true potential. Apart really from maybe like the Chengdu series, but I don't know. Overall, with the Florida Mayhem, I still feel good about them. Like, I don't really consider them a massive dark horse going into every tournament at this point, because like BKB and Yaki, they always make sure that Florida is competitive in series. Well, unless it's shock, but I feel like they always have that level of consistency because of BKB and Yaki, and then if OG and Gargle are comfortable in a meta, like, they can really elevate their play and play up the teams.
It felt like BQB definitely stepped up a little more after this series, but this series he was getting hard rolled by Lip. It's been a while since I've seen BQB have very little impact in a game, but this game he was almost non-existent. I mean, Lip just had his number every time, whether he was playing the I mean, mostly when they were playing the hit scan stuff, when Lip was on the Ashe and the McCree, and I think Lip played a bit of Tracer at the beginning of the series as well, though he really started popping off on the Tracer in the later games. But he was dominating, and Lip just played a phenomenal tournament. It's probably the best tournament that I've seen from Lip, and it wasn't on his Sombra either. His Sombra actually
his Sombra was not the highlight.
No, his Sombra actually looked like the low light, if anything, but everything else was sublime.
His Tracer was probably the best Tracer like we've seen in a while. Honestly, his Tracer was so good during this tournament. Now, he kept them alive in this too, because I don't ever associate Fate with having like just poor, like, Fate's never has always been like a super consistent tank, but this was like a rough tournament for Fate. I think like the tank line, like a Void I thought performed fine. I think Void performed perfectly fine, but Fate looked rough, and it was honestly on Lip a lot of the times. Lip and Izayaki to keep them like in it like a lot. Like, they actually saved Dragons so often, and the Sombra was not the play, especially versus like Mayhem, where Yaki's just especially when they mirror, Yaki's a better Sombra than Lip. Like, legitimately, Lip, he's just the neutral Sombra. He's the spy in the back. He's decloaking, getting like 80% ult charge every fight, like instantaneously, but then he throws away his EMP. And that's like the real problem. But if they just kept him on Tracer, I don't think this match would have been that close, honestly. I think if Lip had played Tracer full time, they probably would have won this like a 3-1.
Weird scenario. Also, another thing that I noticed that I wanted to get your guys' comments on throughout this too is that it felt like the Winston comps really evolved, and APAC was at the front of it, where a lot of the NA teams were playing the double bubble and they understood how to play it, and it's quite formulaic, it's quite slow, but the ult cycle in and the way that it creates space and that kind of stuff is all really powerful. But then the APAC teams, especially Shanghai, playing a lot more of the Winston Diva instead, were just fucking up that whole game plan of the double bubble comps, really pushing the weaknesses of Zarya and making the main tanks feel very vulnerable. And we saw more and more teams transition to playing Winston D.Va themselves afterwards. Is that something that you guys noticed as well as being a trend? I felt like that was a key theme to why teams like Florida weren't actually able to get their Winston comps dominant in the same way that they were over in North America. They just were pushed so far out of their comfort zone.
We saw that in APAC during like the season, right? Where they didn't really kind of go towards Zarya comps. They played a lot of the Winston D.Va. I think
for
it
Shanghai.
was for even the other teams because they played APAC played a little bit more Ashe than NA, and because of the knockback with the bubble onto the Winston with the coach gun, went through the
there's
bubble.
like a bug. Yeah,
it's like a bug. Yeah, so we saw APAC play the D.Va, and I think a part of it is because they played so much Ashe and they realized that the Zarya bubble wasn't going to do anything to the Winston, and then maybe they kind of thought the composition was just better over time. Where NA, we didn't see any Ashe really. I mean, not at to the same level. It was a lot of like the McCree type of plays. So I think probably just the way that both regions individually played. I mean, this is why it's great to see the international competition because we get to see these types of metas and opinions on it clash. But I thought the D.Va was pretty impactful, especially I think against like for the Florida Mayhem in a negative way, right?
Yeah.
I'm personally of the opinion that the D.Va, that because teams had not had to deal with the D.Va as well, like it really caused an issue for all the double bubbles comps because, like you talked about, Josh, the D.Va is just so good at pressuring the Winston, like all the time, keeping a lot of pressure on the Winston and denying the space. And like double bubble is great for like when you've also this was another trad. Oh my god!
Yeah, there were so many moments like this in this series though.
Where it was truly unlucky on that moment. But I do think that like the Winston D.Va gave a nice benefit in that like when it's much easier to actually go and put the pressure on the back line and take the space away because double bubble you're good at pressuring and then you fall back and then you redive and you sort of just build that till your Zarya has like 100 energy and you have primal and such. But it's a lot harder to take those very aggressive fights off the engage. And that's why I really liked about the APAC Winston D.Va comps is that like they just made so much space for their DPS players consistently that the double bubble was sitting there trying to like push them back and retake their own space while they're just sitting there for free. And that's something that Mayhem I think struggled with a bit on top of like the general misplay was like, what do you do again? What do you do with the aggression? You know, how do you deal with the aggression? Because Lip was just kind of free to own because of all the space they had on Tracer.
Did you guys expect them to beat Chengdu, though? Because I actually thought Chengdu would win. I had Mayhem going out in 2, and I thought that Chengdu looked... I thought Chengdu looked pretty strong coming into the May Melee, and also they had like... It felt to me like they had a pretty good understanding of the meta, apart from Rush. Like, okay, they weren't really going to play Rush, but they had enough answers to teams that wanted to play Rush as well. Like, I thought it was quite unique the way that they were playing their Orisa ball comps. It didn't always work, but also we saw throughout the tournament the double shield kind of stuff really could be effective. They beat Dallas Fuel on Blizzard World running it. We had Shanghai running double shield to be able to defend on Hanamura that nearly worked extremely well, and some other different kind of variations of it too. So I actually felt like Chengdu had a pretty decent playbook to come in, and I was surprised that they weren't able to convert it into anything.
And before we finish on the well, I guess it kind of goes into Chengdu as well. We talked about how much the league points mattered for the Dallas Fuel. Yeah. This match was for one of the league points. The loser got 0. So like Chengdu still sits at 3 league points where they could have passed Seoul, they could have tied Philly and be 1 behind Shanghai in terms of APAC.
Might end up mattering so much at the end of the season.
They get none, and Florida actually gets the 1, which is massive because Florida now goes and plays London, Houston, Dallas, and the Justice this tournament. So they kind of have the extra buffer of kind of having like 1 win extra, right? If I was to pick a team that I was the most disappointed with in the weekend, it wouldn't be the Florida Mayhem. It would be the Chengdu Hunters. I thought I was really strong on this team coming in, and not even as like a meme. I actually thought like they had a chance to win it, that they could play all these different types of things. You know, we saw sick stuff from Jimmy. They seemed a bit flat. I don't know. It was just really a odd performance from Chengdu. And what was it? Was it the game against Dallas or one of the games I cast, it may have been here during the Mayhem when they subbed in Eamon for Gaga to play the ball.
They did that a couple of
He
times.
won that map though.
Yeah.
He won
they
that
did
map
win
though.
the map. They did
I
win
think
the
they
map.
actually.
but-
I think Eamon is undefeated right now, isn't he? I think
Yeah.
they won every map
he
where they
played
subbed.
Busan.
Yeah,
such a weird thing though.
it is.
I think
well,
Gaga had an underperformance compared to what
He
we've
did.
seen. Gaga, and also I think their Jinmu strats, because they brought in Jinmu exclusively to play like silly and play like silly heroes, and he did not have the silly factor on today. Like he looked good at points, but they just weren't able. They committed to Jinmu being on Pharah a lot, and he just wasn't getting enough value. Like some often, he just was not getting enough value when they committed to Jinmu on these comps, and they were like, "Well, we need to swap, but we only have Jinmu in, and Jinmu can only play silly, so we have to play like Sim." And then it's like, well, that's not a comp we're particularly good at comparatively to a lot of other teams. So definitely something went wrong with them on just their performance, I feel, because I also was feeling pretty good about Chengdu. Mayhem they exceeded expectations for me. It was Chengdu that definitely was the underperformer. And I don't know what, and also Elsa as a Elsa defender and who had looked pretty good at this point, Elsa also looked kind of rough at points. Like their ult coordination was kind of terrible at times.
It felt like they really honed in on like trying to beat Dallas Fuel by just playing these wonky, anti-brawl compositions, and then that sort of like, ended up being what they practiced all week. So they pulled it out against Florida Mayhem and teams like this as well. I mean, I wasn't too high on the Chengdu Hunters. I actually. We're not looking at my pick'ems. They were horrendous. I think I got one match right, but I think I didn't rate Leave and Jimmy and stuff that high compared to BKB and Yaki. I mean, I like the Chengdu Hunters and I think they're good, but I'm just like, I hadn't seen it from Jimmy Jet, and so Jimmy Jet.
Jimmy Jet.
I didn't trust him versus like BQB and Yaki. He had that one really good Gibraltar game against Dallas Fuel. I think that's when he really popped off. But it was also, or no?
Yeah, I think that was right.
Yeah, it was Gibraltar. Yeah.
But I looked back on that map and I was like, Dallas Fuel actually kind of just threw Gibraltar a bit against Chengdu Hunters in that upper bracket match. So I felt like Florida Mayhem, like if they just come in and feel a bit better about themselves and show some more teamwork, I think BKB, Yaki is enough to make them competitive, and then OG Gargoyle will be better than Gagel. So I think so. I still think they need some more experience, some more teamwork. Like they're still figuring things out.
The amount of times that Gaga would get hacked on the Wrecking Ball, like in this series, just tilted me out of my mind. And then he just continued to play it, and
they played it all the time.
And they didn't change the thing. They, like every time he would roll in, he'd get hacked, they die. Then they would just wait for him to come back and do the same exact thing.
There's only one player that can play it into the counters. It's Among. That's it.
If I could have said what I wanted to say during this cast, I would have been like, change your fucking composition, Chengdu. What the fuck are you doing? Like they just kept rolling in, and then he just get hacked. He was dead, and then they all just kind of looked around like, oh man, that didn't go well. Let's just do it again. Like it was so bad, so bad.
Yeah, I think. How do you guys feel about Chengdu for the future, though? Because I do think that they've got something here. They look like they can be competitive at the top of APAC. I think that their team is working pretty well. I don't even think they're like really that silly. I don't think that the narrative of being in the Chengdu zone or whatever is particularly applicable. They played mostly meta stuff apart from these Pharah comps that they brought out, which I wouldn't really consider to be meta. There weren't many teams that were playing them unless they were specifically against some rush comp or something, but that wasn't what they were doing. They were just trying to force them a lot. But I still feel like this team has decent potential, and the more they work on adding stuff to their playbook, I think the better they'll be. They have good personnel.
Yeah, I think for both Chengdu and for Mayhem, this was just like an experience tournament, because I think both teams have really solid rosters and great potential down the line rest of the season, but like you don't really see overnight successes when good Overwatch players become elite Overwatch players. So I feel like Chengdu Hunters, they needed this tournament as like some team experience, like player experience to play these really close playoff games. because I mean, there is a factor here. Like Dallas Fuel, they have like that championship, experience, that they have that X factor that you really need to win some of these close playoff games. If like Chengdu Hunters and Florida Mayhem, they're still building on that experience and trying to develop as a team to really, reach their maximum potential. So I feel like Chengdu Hunters, like they have the personnel, as you said. I just think they need, more stage playoff experience under their belt to really develop and evolve and be good.
It's the first time they ever had expectations. The only expectations they had before were to come in and play weird shit and hang out. Yeah, I mean now they actually had expectations, and I think I'm still pretty high on this team. I think Jinmu, Leave, and Jimmy are really strong. We got to see it a little bit, but I think far away when like we can see like some Zenyatta play. I think
when he
was fucking
in.
sick on the Zen. Yeah. I think he could be like a real big player for them in the future. And hopefully you don't see like these type of performances out of Elsa. I think he had better performances during the stage overall, but this is a pretty rough weekend for him. Their schedule looks like for the June Joust: Shanghai, Philly, Seoul, Hangzhou.
Shanghai, Philly.
That's a pretty tough schedule.
That is a really tough schedule. But at the same time, we don't exactly know. Like we have no idea what the hero pool is going to look like. We have no idea what the meta is going to be, because even if the hero pool didn't exist, the meta would probably start to trend in a direction. I don't know what the fuck direction, because this tournament was still. It felt like this tournament got more open the longer we played it. By the end, people were playing very
Soldier
specific.
76.
Yeah, like stuff
Soldier
to just
76.
It felt almost like ranked balance, where you're picking something to counter something else that they're specifically doing. You're not playing something because it's good in the meta. You're playing it because it can get you value for this specific part of the map.
It felt like a lot more counter picking than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, tons of it.
100%. I do feel like Chengdu honestly had the opposite problem, Matt, and I think you honed in on it there. This Gaga ball pick straight up threw them multiple maps.
It did.
Straight up through them multiple maps. Like Yaki was just like, oh, he's going to keep playing ball. I'm going to keep playing Sombra. I'm going to just fucking ruin your life. I'm just going to ruin your life. And they did. They ruined Gaga's life. They poisoned the watering hole. They burned the crops. Like Gaga's life was absolutely wrecked by Yaki Sombra. And they didn't swap. And the thing is, Gaga, the whole point of Gaga is that he can play Winston. He can play other main tanks. He could have played other shit. And they just kept playing it. And like, this is like the inverse Chengdu issue where like, before they had to play ball. There was no option. Now they're just like, well, we're going to play ball because we want to. And it's so weird. And then also, oh my God, this Orisa ball comp was even like, they just pulled shit. I don't know. I don't think the Chengdu silly zone is exists so much anymore. Like they're not actually silly, but I think it's still so ingrained in their DNA that they just play so fucking silly. Like this is like
coach, right? Coach.
What a weird ass. What is this comp?
I quite like this comp.
Why? Elsa just sits there and gets shot. That's the whole comp.
Yeah, but it's really hard to play quickly into this comp, because you're the ball and the halt, like the pile drives and the halt, make it very disruptive to try and
looks like
play
Plat
against it with any pace.
It's not really disruptive to your ball tracer that just owns you.
Right, but in this example, they fucked up the execution of it too, because they're able to allow them through the choke without getting enough damage on them. And
I don't think they had any good executions in this comp though when they played in the melee.
They definitely did in the qualifier games, and I think they didn't. Did they not play this? No, they played a double shield comp against Dallas to win on Blizzard World, right? It wasn't Ball Orisa. But
like I understood the concept, I just didn't personally against a team when you're dealing against a team that is perfectly confident to play like dive into you. I just feel like I always hate playing more static comps like this when one player's whole existence is to survive, Elsa's whole existence is to live. And that's it.
Put down shields, hit fortify, and stand on the point. Hope everybody else on the other team dies before you do.
It was just strange because this is like Chengdu could do whatever they wanted and they still worked themselves into a silly corner.
Right, yeah. I think that there was some sense of Chengdu getting behind the meta, to be honest. Like it felt like other teams were either ignoring it and succeeding because of that, like Dallas, or in some sense, defining the meta a little bit, like Shanghai. I feel like what Shanghai was playing was extremely difficult for other teams to deal with, and they always had to adapt to that. But then Dallas was just the outlier because they just played whatever the fuck they wanted, and they were able to win because they have just such excellent team coordination. What I wanted to ask you guys is, who do you feel more confident about, Mayhem or Chengdu moving forwards? When I look at our early season power rankings, we had Chengdu in 10th and we had Mayhem in 9th. So we had them neck and neck. I mean, they're actually finishing 4th and 3rd in the main melee, so that's a totally different discussion about how underrated we had them. But in terms of going forwards, which do you feel better about for the long term over the course of the whole season from what they've shown so far?
I think the Mayhem are a better team, but I think because of region, I think the Hunters are going to have more opportunities, and I think they'll end up placing higher in APAC than Florida will, like in NA.
Really? There's more free wins in NA, Matt.
I'm still not entirely sold on Hangzhou yet. New York, I don't think has been playing extremely well.
No.
I think the Hunters will be pretty solid for like top 4s in APAC with a chance, one match to get there. Where Florida, you're gonna have to go through. I mean, like the Shocks of the world, the Gladiators are gonna get better. The Rain is still like, even though they're not like the best, they're still like a tough team. I think Boston won't be as terrible as they were this stage. I think there's just a lot of teams that you have to go through that. If you don't place at the top 2 of NA and you have to win those 2 matches to get in, I think it's going to be way tougher than what it was this go around. So I would say Chengdu personally.
I'm gonna go Florida Mayhem here. Actually, I feel like they're really about to blossom the rest of this season. I feel like they've been a good/great team for like a year now, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this was a really good tournament experience for them. We know that BKB and Yaki, they fuck. I feel like OG is overall a consistent main tank on all 3 main tanks he played. If we get into an Orisa meta, I think people are just going to roll over this team. I think they're going to struggle to get OG to play Orisa good. And so I'm worried about that if that happens with hero pools. But overall, I think this is a consistently good team, really good vibes, good coaching. Whereas Chengdu Hunters, they're still like messing around, and we saw that with player substitutions, hero swaps. I don't have full confidence in Chengdu Hunters yet, so I'm going with Florida.
Right.
Well, first, once again, I have to be a little smug.
Okay.
I rated Mayhem and Chengdu way higher than both of you guys preseason. So
where'd you put Dallas?
First caveat. Dallas was up there. Dallas was also very up there.
Oh, really?
So I was pretty accurate, I would say, honestly.
He was getting paid by Dallas, though. He was getting paid by Dallas.
But no. But I did take 2 big L's. I took 2 gigantic L's in that I rated Hangzhou quite, and I rated. So I was like, I even believed in Guangzhou. And that has been, those 2 teams have been raging dumpster fires. So in return, I have like some amazing picks and I have some awful.
But that's how venture capital works, right? You know, you're still out on top.
True. I did come out on top still in that situation. But either way, I also agree. I believe Mayhem is going to be better long term. I thought they were going to be very good long term still. I agree with Johnny's point about Orisa with OG. But I'm less worried about that because I feel like, I don't know, because I think no matter which main tank gets banned, it like, I guess it depends on which tanks get banned actually, because like reasonably, since we saw so much variety, if Ryan gets banned, Mayhem's fine. If Winston's gets banned, Mayhem's probably still fine. If Ball gets banned, Mayhem's still fine. You know, like there's very few options currently with how the meta works where like Orisa's a requirement, I feel.
Yeah.
Depending on which, so like obviously it changes with the balance patches. So and I think Yaki, BKB are nutters and everything. So overall, I feel more confident about Mayhem. But Chengdu does have like, they have all the things they need to be good. It's literally just, can they pick the right comp? Like they do have all the things they need to be good though. It's just a comp thing for them, I think.
If we put to bed Dallas versus the Fuel, the new thing is Chengdu versus the Hunters. Like it just seems like they're always got, like they have all of the players they need. It just seems sometimes they're like working against themselves. Like, I mean, I do believe though they have the talent to like they have enough talent to like win a tournament this year. I think.
Chengdu?
Yeah, I think their players are good enough. I just don't know if they'll fucking figure out what to play at certain times and whatnot. Like I think it's not. I don't think it's like a skill thing. I think if anything, it's just not being able to figure out what to play in certain situations, or just fucking just think to do weird shit in certain situations, which will hold them back.
They won this map,
Full
right?
dive could hit Mayhem too. Yeah, this is the map that Chengdu won.
Is this the only map where they won with the Orisa ball in?
But they didn't play it the whole time.
Yeah,
I don't think they swapped. But yeah, this is the only map they won. I actually think Mayhem could hurt. The one meta that could hurt Mayhem, besides an Orisa meta, is a full dive meta where you want to be playing like Tracer Genji or something like that.
Yeah,
because I don't think. Because I don't think BQB is equipped with a hero pool for that sort of meta. Because Yaki's sort of their Tracer player and their flex DPS player aside from Hanzo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really has to be a question of how well Checkmate would fit into the roster.
I mean, Johnny said they were going to put Checkmate in this series, right?
That was my bold prediction. Stop treating it as
wait, did you really?
Yeah, he's like your bold prediction. They're going to play Checkmate in the series.
Segment for a bold prediction, and he wants me to say some horse shit like, oh, they're gonna
was a ridiculous statement. I was like, they may not have even brought Checkmate to Hawaii for all we know. I mean, Checkmate, you can be sitting at home watching in Florida.
You know, there's a new gimmick account. It's like Checkmate is the new like summon sewer. Like it's some sort of like pro player. Like Checkmate is the new something. I have to go find the account.
I think it was a good bold prediction. It's not too outlandish either.
That was not too outlandish. In their elimination game in the playoffs, they were going to play Checkmate.
You couldn't even tell me what team he comes from. You couldn't tell me like if he played in Chinese or Korean contenders, Matt. So just shut
He's a rookie. Krong is a rookie.
That's not true anymore.
Saying, if they had committed to full dive against Shanghai Dragons, I just think like that wasn't even a matchup. I just think that he has a place in the Florida Mayhem roster. And if they
ran him in the preseason,
wanted to commit to full dive,
They ran him in the preseason on Echo, and he was playing Echo for OZ as well. So I could see him play. He definitely does have a role on this team. It's not like he's just a random bench player. It's just, do we get to a meta where he's actually required? Or
I'm trying to think of a random bench player now that would be that you're not going to see play. I'm trying to think of a team that has.
Well, I don't think Mickey's
not on. Mickey's not on the field anymore.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the next team though. I want to talk about the Shanghai Dragons. I believed in these guys. I love them. I didn't even think that they would make it this far though. I still had more faith in the Chengdu Hunters, honestly. But they ended up letting me down. Shanghai had 3 games in a row. Was it even more than that? No, I think it was 3. Every single time they drew on Assault and went to 6 maps and won 3-2 in their qualifier game and both of their opening games in the May Melee. That is madness. And in both of them, in fact, in all 3 of them, it could be argued that the other team should have won. You know, when people look back at games and they're like, well, really, the other team should have won that. What they normally mean is they had an advantage and they weren't able to close it out. And that happened in all 3 of the games where the opposing team had a pretty significant advantage on at least one of the maps and couldn't close it out. Happened against the Mayhem very notably. Happening at the Philadelphia Fusion as well when they weren't able to attack and close out Volskaya when they just running double shield and tried the teleporter strat around the side. And it happened against the Dallas Fuel as well. It felt to me when I was watching that they should have been able to probably close out Anubis and maybe win on Blizzard World as well. Do you feel like Shanghai got lucky here with second place? I'm just going to throw that question out there. Sounds inflammatory. Are you on board with it at all?
I think the Fusion match was a huge throw by the Fusion. So if you were to say any match was one where they kind of got lucky, I don't think it's once we got to the Final Four. I think against Philly doing the fucking Bren TP strat with double shield for the win. I mean, that was outrageous. But I think Shanghai was a team that you saw as they got more tape watching people and they were able to, come up with different strategies and really kind of catch people out. He got better as the tournament went on. I don't think you can say any type of like top 2 performance is like a fluke, right? Especially with how good we've seen this team play in the past. I think it was like this was the team I did not expect to get in the top 2 though. Like I thought with how they played against Philly, I thought this team would kind of bow out early, but they looked much better.
Avast, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think if you just win every time when you're about to lose, you probably deserve to win.
Sure.
At the end of the day, like so I think that's the big thing for Dragons is that I think people did underestimate them a bit coming in here. Though Matt's point about like this should have been kind of like it should have never even started situation because Fusion was the better team in my opinion coming into this, but Dragons like really just abused the fact that Fusion played a dumb comp. After that, I think Dragons that once they get enough like track and they're able to get running a bit, once they learn the co-op controls for their team and they're fucking spamming about everywhere, eventually they get this enough steam to be really, really good. Like this, the biggest thing for me that's a questionable thing now for Dragons is legitimately just Fate. It's legitimately just Fate, and it's strange because I actually thought the Fate Fearless trade was not a bad trade in the offseason because I was pretty big on Fate. I thought Fate was arguably the most consistent main tank in the league behind Mono coming into this year.
Really?
And then he's looked kind of rough on Dragons. So, like, I didn't think he had the same like highs as Fearless, but I thought he was a far more well-rounded main tank and essentially the most consistent main tank behind Mono. And
I mean,
this
are you
year
ignoring Smurf from that as well? Are you just kind of taking him out of the question?
Well, I am taking him out because Smurf does not play Rhine, while Fate does. So that's the difference. Is like I think Fate is like the most consistent. Was the most consistent, well-rounded main tank behind Mono, and now that whole narrative has been questioned with his performance on because Smurf obviously, if you put him in for like Ball or Winston or Orisa, you're like, oh yeah, Smurf's really good, but he just can't play Rhine, and that's a big deal right now.
I don't think I mean, this is a wild tangent, but he has played Rhine for them in the past when he's been required to. Just
I don't like
you
it.
have to flex over. You don't like it?
I think I don't like it. Yeah.
I don't think we have a large enough sample size. I think he probably could play it if you gave him time with it. I think he just doesn't because Super's so good.
I think that's a great point. Like I wasn't high on Fate to start the season in the first place, and I think like if there's one thing that'll hold them back, it's the tank play this year.
Well,
in that position.
Here's a question. I think we can all agree that Fate had a pretty rough tournament, right? But I'm willing to throw him a bit of a bone in that the Shanghai Dragons never play around him. They always play to disrupt their opponent rather than to empower Fate. It's not like it's not like they're playing a style where he's constantly getting pocketed like somebody like Fearless is, for example. So I can give him a pass in some of these instances, but I still agree he made some like serious errors and ended up dying first and cost them some big.
But even
especially in the finals.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
I mean, sorry. Do you want
to? No. Go on your tangent. I have another question that I think is very interesting about it, but please talk first.
Okay, we got a lot of storylines here because I'm gonna go back to the lucky part as well.
Okay,
so we got a lot of things we're juggling here. Like, but especially in the finals, I just like disagreed with a lot of the decisions that Fate made when it came to like leaping on Winston. I looked at that match, and it felt like their strategy was just like to make space for Fleta and like nano Fleta's Echo so he could do work and put pressure on Fearless. And for that to happen, Fate just had to like leap in on Winston and just go very, very deep. But even so, I think like some of the timings he had with jumping in and trying to make space, Void wasn't necessarily ready to pocket him. I think he had something crazy like 16 or 17 deaths on King's Row alone. Like he just hard fed on this map.
Yeah, he got
and I
rolled.
don't necessarily blame him single-handedly as a player, because I did make a video about this on my YouTube channel, and I was like, actually, sometimes like your main tank's playstyle is a team decision because you have a strategy and a tactic you want to execute, and you can't just single-handedly like call him Fate out for diving in when that was obviously the strategy. That being said, the execution was off. Didn't like it. Obviously, a big factor as to why Shanghai Dragons ultimately fell in the finals. But overall, if I'm going to go back to the lucky part, I just want to give them mad props with the way they adapted to the meta and improved seemingly every single series. Like that's the hallmark of a really good team that is confident in their abilities and like great minds, good coaching, all of that. So I agree with Matt. I actually think that Fusion should have won that initial series in the knockouts. But that being said, I underestimated the Shanghai Dragons. They adapted beautifully. I think they played really good Overwatch. And so I still think you have to consider them like a top tier team, no matter if they seem to struggle initially in some metas or whatnot.
Okay, here's my question. You talked a little bit about the Fate and Fearless trade as well, but I don't just want to think about it as a straight up trade because it was really a 3-way shuffle. Because you had, when Fate moved over to Shanghai, he created that hole in the mayhem that was then filled in by OG. So I like to think of it as the 3-way like split, right? You had Fearless moving over to Dallas, Fate moves over to Shanghai, and OG comes in to fill in on mayhem. Who do you feel the most confident about, and who do you think are the best end of that? And I feel like the answer is obviously Dallas, but can you guys walk me through like why or like what you think the future of the other main tanks are and how they have? Because we're at the end of one quarter of the season, and I feel like now is a good time, especially with as much meta diversity as we had. We've seen all of these main tanks play everything other than Orisa, essentially. So it feels like we've got a pretty decent sample size at this point to start figuring out whether these were good decisions in the offseason to go for these specific people. What do you think, Mike?
I think Dallas looks great, obviously, with Fearless. I think that's worked out.
Yeah.
I think OG's found a great home with the Mayhem. I think having like a Kuki as his coach, who like a former main tank, I would actually love to know what the hell Shanghai would look like with OG as the tank. I think he has some of that like, pop off aggressiveness as like Fearless did, but not as consistent. Okay. Obviously, I think Shanghai is the one who kind of comes out on the like out of those three, like on the bottom. Like they won't obviously look like that because of like their record and how well they'll play, because they have just a tremendous team around. But I think in the end, probably all of them are pretty okay with what happened. I mean, Fearless didn't want to play for Shanghai anymore, right? It wasn't like
no.
He basically just said, "I want to go play for Dallas. Get rid of me," and then put Shanghai in a position where they had to find somebody. But
I think saying he didn't want to play for Shanghai is maybe phrasing it a bit incorrectly, though, because he really, I think, wanted to go and play for Dallas. Like, he saw the Element Mystic people getting back together, and he wanted to go there. It wasn't like he was like, "Get me the
being
fuck
on
out
one
of
team
Shanghai."
And wanting to go to another team means you don't want to be on that team.
Not exactly, though, because if you just want to leave Shanghai and you're open to anything, that's one thing. But he had a specific target in mind, and then he was like asking Shanghai, "Hey, is it all right if I leave?"
Yeah, without Dallas's offer, I don't know if Fearless necessarily.
He probably doesn't think so. Yeah.
See about your point you made with OG though, I think it was best for his career to actually go to a team that was considered like a dark horse and expectations were still kind of low. Like, say what you want about the Florida Mayhem fan base, a lot of people still underrated them going into the season, and they still haven't like earned their top tier expectation from the community the same way Shanghai Dragons does. If OG went to Shanghai Dragons, I think that would be too much pressure for OG to handle. I personally very much like him in the Florida Mayhem team. I think that's the perfect team for him. So I think I still have faith in Fate on Shanghai Dragons. I think over time they can develop that. Okay, this fucking pick mauled me so hard. Why the fuck do you go Orisa here? This was just
this is ridiculous.
Oh my god. Yeah. Me and Costa, we were roaring, we were screeching in our production voice. Oh my god. But like, this is what I'm talking about. Fate got so boomed on King's Row, he ultimately made this selection. Like, what are you doing, buddy?
Oh my god. Immediately switched to Hanzo and was like, "Thank you." I mean, that's literally what he did.
I'm up in the, I think Fate's had enough historically good performances for me to give him a pass for right now, essentially. And like you said, they did these weird strategies, Johnny, where like they would nano Fleta versus the Winston, which is like, in my opinion, I think that is kind of objectively the wrong play. Like, you just get so much more value out of nanoing your Winston generally, especially because primals are so valuable versus a meta where your Ana's not even perma run, so you can like entirely move the backline with it, and you're playing like a tracer, so like it requires, so you can get so much disruption from a primal. So I don't really know what Shanghai exactly their thoughts are with that. But I'm gonna give Fate the benefit of the doubt and hold on. I think Fearless, obviously, whatever. I mean, like, Fearless is the anime protagonist, so I can't even like. What are you even supposed to say? Like, is there anything you can even say about Fearless? I don't think there really is. Like, he pounds too hard. He pounds too hard. And then there's OG, which I'm actually still not sold on yet.
Yeah, and
I'm not still sold on OG yet. I feel like I love the guy. I think he's got great mechanics still, but he looked rough before, and then they picked it up a lot for Melee. But part of that could just be because of the fact that Yaki went to a turbo Omega pound that I've never even seen before.
Yeah, I didn't think. So my outcome from the Melee was, yeah, Fate is obviously looking rough right now, despite the success of Shanghai. And I felt like that happened to a lesser extent also for the Florida Mayhem, where even though they were very successful, that doesn't mean every single part of your team is working very successfully. And I think OG is still, he's still making some questionable decisions when he's on the server. He's still playing very, he's taking a lot of risks that a lot of other main tanks don't take, trying to rely on his mechanics to bail him out of situations where you would see people who are getting more success, like retreating and regrouping or choosing not to engage at that time. But he's kind of going for the big play. I wonder whether, I mean, I personally think that the former version of Mayhem looked better than this version. Chris aside, because I think that, all right, Slime looks pretty good. You don't get those moments where Chris was like doing all sorts of crazy shit that was losing them team fights occasionally. But I think that the consistency of Fate last year was pretty superb for the Florida Mayhem. And so I wonder whether that portion of the trade has actually been beneficial for both of those teams.
Sure. I agree with you. And I think that last year's Florida Mayhem looked better than what we've seen from them so far. That being said, I still kind of like this Florida Mayhem team. And this time, I think it's different. I think we've seen this from OG in the past, where like he goes in and he has these performances where like it's a bit all over the place. I especially didn't like his play up against Shanghai Dragons in the first series. Like it just looked like nerves to me. Like they lost so much tempo. He played slower. The rotations weren't there. He took so much poke. Like overall, it was what you expected from a Winston player that didn't look comfortable. But I think it's different this time. I really do think that with Coach Kuki and the way this team is developing and growing as a team every tournament, I really think that this time, yes, OG looked inconsistent and he had his moments. I think he's going to build on this in a way that he hasn't previously in his career. It's not like when he was on the Gladiators. It's not like when he was on the Dallas Fuel. I think this was a tournament that Florida Mayhem needed to build on. And I think this time they're actually going to learn, especially OG is going to learn significantly from it and become a better player in the end.
I could definitely buy that. I could totally buy that.
I'd love to. It's like such a what if scenario. Like if the Fusion actually made it to the top 4, what they would have ended up doing. Because I think watching them, they were sick. I mean, Mono, HOTBA, Tobi look like they look like how they looked like in their primes, not like kind of like how people thought they were potentially washed. It's just a bit of a throw against Shanghai prevents them from getting there.
See, I get that for HOTBA. I still don't buy that narrative for Tobi. I don't know who was watching the games. Tobi never looked washed, and I will fight anyone in the streets, shirt off.
Oh well, I'm saying like most people on the internet will just say as soon as the player doesn't start every game, they have become washed.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, we'll have some more comments on that later.
I've never been washed myself, so
I tweeted out earlier. I didn't say that they were washed, but I said that this was a revitalizing experience for HOTBA and Tobi, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, Avast, but I think I think it's very impressive because these were 2 free agents that were signed to short-term contracts and earned themselves an extension because they overperformed.
Oh yeah, no, I 100% agree. Yeah, I agree with your statement there.
Yeah, and probably, of course, if Funny Astro and Poco could have arrived to Korea, they probably wouldn't have, extended the contracts in the first place. But I still think that, like, the fact that they decided to stay with them, extend them, was a testament to their play. And they went from being free agents who didn't get signed for this season of OWL to earning themselves a season contract because they looked good in the initial stage. So I just think it's very good for both of those moving forward and their future ambitions.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with how short their contracts were, I'm sure that all the other teams in APAC knew they looked good enough that maybe one of the other ones would have been interested in bringing them in.
Yeah, maybe. What the fuck was going on with Fleda constantly duplicating the Annas in this game?
Yes,
what was this?
Dude, they would have won Gibraltar if he had not duped an Ana. They would have
did it like
Gibraltar.
3 or 4 times over the course of the series.
Possible target. I will never understand it.
Fleda was holding his duplicate. Like Shanghai were holding their ults for a long time to use them to counter Dallas's aggression. And then if you waste your ultimate like that, like you've been holding it a huge amount of time, you've not been trying to gain tempo for your team by using it to cut a fight short and give yourself an advantage. You're like holding on a knife's edge, trying to use as few abilities as possible. And then when you're forced to use your duplicate, you go to fucking Ana.
It's very simple. It's very simple, John. They use the nano on Fleda to do enough damage to get a duplicate to copy an Ana to try and get 2 nanos.
Nice.
So you get 2 nanos.
Genius.
For
and
one.
Then they put them on Void anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was exceptionally strange too because the Brigida was alive in that fight, so he could have copied like Brig to sit on point and just get a rally. Even if he could have gotten a tank too. But the thing is, there was another support option for him to copy, and he chose the Ana.
He duplicated a Brig
Can you go to end of
on this map
Kurt?
as well too.
I just that fight molded me. The Fleta Ana choices molded me out of this world.
He did it on Dorado too, in the upper bracket
constantly.
finals.
Yeah, constantly.
Yeah.
Do you think?
And he went on. I got 4% ult charge and then died.
Oh yeah. No, that was so sad. That was so sad.
I hated it.
Do you think that the level of play was good in this tournament? That's
a good question.
A very open question. And my initial reaction when I was watching the games was, fuck yeah, it's good. But there were also a lot of
Papega plays.
There were definitely a number of serious Papega plays scattered throughout the games, which you can attribute to nerves or the pressure getting to people and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say this was the cleanest tournament of all time. Right? Like even the team that won played some very odd shit, but in a good way.
Here's the thing, and is oscillating the right word for this?
Depending on what you're about to say.
Yes.
we don't know what you're going to say.
Could be the right word, depending on what he's about to say.
By the way, is this when Fleta turns into we'll
yes,
get to it.
It is this fight. What he gets it. But I
mean, when we probably had the most diverse Overwatch League meta that we've had in 3 years and 1 month or whatever.
Sure.
And naturally, I think the level of play is going to decrease because you're switching between so many play styles, so many compositions, and counterpicking so much. So, the opposite side of the spectrum would be GOATs. We played GOATs for over a year. And so the differences in play comes in how you use your abilities, the micro stuff, the very small things. That is what's going to decide games. Whereas here, it's all about the macro, swapping comps, always having an advantage in hero picks. Here's when the Fleta swaps to Ana, and
dude,
I don't know
look how many there are. Hanbin and Jexa are both alive to get copied. He could copy both of those players.
They lose so much damage on that D.Va.
Imagine if they had a rally for this fight or a bomb.
They did have rally. Lee J. God was using rally. I think he probably was actually trying to keep Lee J. God alive during the rally and then maybe nano him and nano a rally, but that's just ridiculous.
It's just not worth. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's insane.
So anyway, I think that if you have very diverse metas, the micro level of play will decrease because the advantages come from swapping heroes and compositions. And if you have a very consistent, one kind of composition meta, that's when you will see the differences in micro play. And naturally, the level of play will be higher, look to be higher, because you're playing the same composition, same play style everywhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that's actually probably the reason is this tempo is so much higher than it has been for our previous metas. Then we had a 6-month off season where everyone's figuring shit out and doing everything. And then on top of that, now we have a huge variety. It's tough to have perfect play when you're not executing on the same comp for months on end. So.
I think also that the like positional play and the macro play was really fucking good. Like way better than a lot of the previous seasons. It's just that the errors when they come, it's like when C9s happen. It's like it's such an obvious mistake that it's like, well, how do they even do that?
Yeah.
But it's because they're playing at such a high level everywhere else that sometimes such a clear thing can slip through the cracks just via a very basic communication mistake, or like you think someone's going onto it and you're trying to delay as long as possible. I think the same kind of stuff happened probably with like that crazy Grav pulse bomb failed attempt from the Florida Mayhem, you know? It's like Shanghai are all playing up on the high ground. They're all trying to make it as difficult as possible. And it's just, they can't manufacture an easy scenario like you might have seen in previous seasons for that to happen. I just wanted to throw that question out there because I do think that there were many, many Papega moments. And I think it's always important to consider, like, have we just got swallowed away by the hype? Was it actually good? But I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay, Dallas, they finally defeated the Fuel. The cycle of misery has been broken. The bands have been snapped. The shackles leased. Is this truly a turning point for this organization? Because it fucking feels like it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're as fucking terrible as they've been for as long as they've been, now that I mean, how many years have we been sitting here and just saying the same shit of like, yeah, they need to hit the full fucking the reset button. They need to hit the reset button. And then like each year they would just make like a minuscule change, be like, yeah, no, we're good now. Like everything's all sorted.
I mean, does
and
that count for season 3 though? I mean, they sort of did make a pretty big changes from between season
like
2 and 3.
like Gamsu Note. Was that the
still
Gamsu
kept a
Note?
lot
They had
of people
Gamsu
on.
Note, Paint. I mean, they also had Closer. They had Decay.
But they still kept Unco. They kept AKM.
They still kept the same coaching staff.
They
still had Trill on the roster.
They kept the same
who also
coaches.
didn't play.
RCK.
Same coaches.
RCK didn't play and got traded.
RCK
He got traded for Note season 2, technically.
Yeah, RCK got traded
Yeah.
for Note. Yeah. I think they just needed to clear house. Like everything. Like that, because I think once you kind of have that type of like losing kind of culture like set in, even if you keep some of the players, right, it just kind of engulfs everybody else in it. Where this is the year that they finally did it. They said, you know what, we're gonna get rid of everybody pretty much outside of poor Doha to keep him because he suffered through enough, and get some of his buddies and come in and play. The most surprising thing to me was the ability that they were able to, like, we covered the Coach Rush interview before the season started, where he said he felt that they were good enough to like play anything, even if it didn't really fit the meta, that their players were talented enough. And it looked like some meme shit. It looked like some season 1, like Shanghai Dragons, when we interviewed the coaches and we were like, hey, all your supports are Lucio players. How do you expect to play Zen? They were like, yeah, don't worry about it. It fucking felt like some of that shit, but they actually did it, which I think is the most impressive thing. I mean, Sparkle Lock in the legs here is just absolutely just bonkers. But this is a turning point for this organization. Now the fan base actually, instead of pretending that their team can win, they actually have a team that can win now.
I mean, the macro level of play from this team is incredible. And I mean, that's why we won. We addressed it already. You want a good macro game if you want to be competitive in a diverse meta like this. And I think they've shown, like, the entire stage almost, that their macro game is insane. Like, going back to their losses early on, they lost to Houston Outlaws, who were playing like a counter to what Dallas Fuel were doing, which then kind of got figured out. I guess those kind of comps, like Rhino comps, saw less success as the tournament went on. Washington Justice, which is like, okay, you lost to the Washington Justice just playing Winston mirrors. That's an incredibly tough matchup. That's what Washington Justice excels at. But from there on, like, they just found their groove. Incredible macro game overall, just like positioning, the composition picks, all of that stuff. Like Sparkle, he's not a tracer god mechanically, but he's always in the right place at the right time. And it's unbelievable how he does it. And I think that really exemplifies Dallas Fuel and what they're about overall. Like, when they approached this meta, like, it was so beautiful. They were always at the right place at the right time. And that's why they were better than everyone else.
You know what
Just
they
like
did in their
timings.
off week too? they stopped with that bullshit, subbing in fucking Jexay, Repel, and Fielder all over the place.
I'm glad you were the one that brought that up.
Yeah, I mean they fucking they were playing the Houston Outlaws musical chairs for the fucking first.
By the way, Fielder's really fucking good. As if you couldn't tell that from last season.
Fielder owns, man. I mean, why was Repel ever in over Fielder? But Fielder also was playing from Mercury, 300 ping all of last year, dominated, and he's so good, man. That was wild to me. I don't understand why they ever
Fielder finishes the entire tournament as the #1 ranked player in the power rankings by IBM.
Yeah. He was number 2.
He was so good, consistently good, played a bunch of different stuff. Like honestly, he had game-winning plays.
The Ana's a bit of a fulcrum of your entire meta right now if you're playing Winston-based compositions, because you're pocketing the Winston as much as possible. If you get pressured, they need to peel for you. You have all the utility to be able to help your backline when you do get pressured. Like the sleep darts are so crucial at being able to shut down opposing Winstons. The Bionades are massive win conditions. The Ana is absolutely critical, and Fielder looked extremely good playing it, as you would expect. I do think that he's a bit unproven when it gets to other roles, because I think he's by far and away his best performances on both Paris and Dallas now have been when playing the Ana. So I'd like to see more from him playing other stuff before.
Really, you don't like his BAP?
I'm going to be honest, I wasn't paying too much attention to it because they didn't play it that much. And so I just wasn't paying attention to it.
I like his BAP personally. I actually think that was the big thing for me why Fielder should be in over Repel more. It's not just because of his overall ability. It's the fact that it gives Dallas the option when they play like the rush comps to put Fielder on BAP over Repel.
Oh yeah, now you mention it, he was actually zinging on BAP, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, his BAP was good last year too for Atlanta.
Zinging, he was zinging on the.
He was fucking zinging.
Paris.
No, I was watching him beam people down for the back
flex board option for this team. I don't know why Repel was in over him ever. I just don't get it.
This composition boomed the fucking Shanghai Dragons.
Oh my god, me and Costa were mauling at this too. I can't believe Shanghai just stuck on this Reinhardt composition. Look at the time. They have 4.5 minutes because they just capped point A, and they stay on this fucking composition for 2.5 minutes, scared of Doa Sombra. Like, they don't even try to force EMP. They don't try to up the tempo. They don't try to like force this EMP somehow. So they waste 2.5 minutes on this composition, just waiting around, getting held in spawn. Like, what are you doing? Just play what you're good at. What is this? Me and Costa were mauling out of control, dude. We were just yelling. It was incredible.
It definitely feels like in a more open meta like this, there are just certain situations where the teams will forget that they have a lot of different options that they could go to if they wanted to.
Yeah.
I feel like teams just kind of get stuck in the thought process of, well, we've committed to it now. We have ults. We can't really change.
See, and that's the thing. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. I'm very sorry. That was very disrespectful. But I loved it when they went Rhine to start the map, because Sparkle came out on Soldier 76. And that's when the adaptation come in. That's when Shanghai Dragons were like, oh, you're going to play Soldier? Like, we'll just play Reinhardt into you and we'll have a better pick than Soldier. Like, we'll just dominate you. But then they got point A almost immediately. And then it's like Fate. It's like, oh, I got 70% of my Earth scatter. I'm going to use it. It's like, no, just abandon ship, dude.
I love it.
Dallas Fuel and Reinhardt. They got it out. Okay, it's been like 1 minute 30 seconds, but still, they got owned. Legion going to drop
the sound barrier here. I was just like, what in the world was this? When we were casting this, I was like, okay, there's 3 dead. Legion got in the middle of the fucking road. Sound barriers. There's nobody fucking here, man. Like, what the fuck were you doing? The fuck were you going?
Before we move on, can I go back to the IBM power rankings? Here's how insane Fielder is. Top 4, Gangnam Gen at number 4. Score is 132. Okay. So like the default, I think, is like 100.
100's so like average, league average.
Yeah, it's not exactly average, but it's like, what they're trying to go for average. Gangnam number 4, 132. Jexay number 3, 135. Number 2 is Sayaki, 135. Fielder is number 1 with 153. 18 points higher than Isayaki. 153 versus 135. Like,
see, here's my thing though. The backline for the Dallas Fuel
ranking, honestly.
Yeah, and the backline for the Dallas Fuel got a lot of credit on social media after their their win because, yeah, I mean, you're doing a great job pocketing Fearless, etc. Their backline actually got kind of torn to pieces by a solo Tracer many times in this series and in the former series. And I felt like there was some real problems with the way that Jexa and also Hanbin on the Diva defensively was dealing with that too. Like, I understand that the strategy was to counter dive and to play aggressively and kind of sacrifice their backline in that sense, but that only applies when you're getting properly dove. That doesn't just apply to when a one Tracer is in your backline. Like that, those scenarios where Lip was getting away, like especially in the first time that this clash happened, with Shanghai and Dallas in the upper bracket final, Lip was getting away with murder.
A poor fielder in that thing, yeah.
And Jexa wasn't really able to hold him off at all, and Hanbin at no point decided to play more defensively. And I feel like this is something that's really slipped under the radar here, is just that if Fearless hadn't been so fantastic, not just Fearless, but like Fearless, Doha, the whole aggressive component of their team, if they hadn't been able to execute that portion of it, they were kind of getting demolished on the counter dives, and not even just the counter dives, just their general backline defense was getting pummeled in a way that the Izzyaki and Lee Jigon wasn't quite, or like the Alarm Funny Astro or Alarm Tobi, I couldn't imagine that backline getting destroyed in quite the same way. So even though I really do give a lot of credit to Fielder for being this fantastic, Jexa being ranked as the #1 main support, just I don't know, man. I don't get on board. I mean,
to me, it's also the gap between Izzyaki and Fielder, because Izzyaki had a banger of a performance during this tournament. Izzyaki had, like, this to me feels like he's just getting team stat difference because his team's losing, and so he's getting like worse stats, which is like objectively incorrect because Izzyaki legitimately had a crazy good tournament performance. And so I don't really agree with that ranking.
Am I allowed to boom Sideshow further?
Do it.
Okay, I'll give you one guess. Matt, don't say it. I'll give you one guess who's number 5 on the support rankings.
So we're talking right underneath Gan Emjin.
Yes, the top 5. Yes. Who's number 5? Here's a hint. It's not one of the top 4 teams at May Melee.
Oh,
it's one of the teams that didn't qualify.
One of the teams that didn't qualify.
I put like probably Jubi or Crimzo is my guess.
Yeah, it'll be one of Jubi or Crimzo because they did so well in terms of their map differential, right? I'm going to say it's like Jubi or something.
Well, it's part of that, but it's not Houston. Bebe is number 5 for Washington Justice. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
He's taking it above Alarm. He's above Alarm.
Yeah. See, that's some fuckery afoot there. When I'm hearing there's some fuckery afoot there. Like that's Watson needs to go back into the shop a bit, get a little calibrated, put some WD-40 on.
But the whole thing,
he gets extra points for those Bebe memes.
The whole thing with Watson is that it requires data to be like the previous things that they did on it. It had the entirety of 2020 to be able to come up with its findings. It's now being asked to do this on the fly, week by week. And you could see like changes happening dramatically. I think Yaki jumped 25 places in that 1 week where they qualified for the May Melee, and he popped the fuck off and got them into the May Melee. Like, of course, a performance like that is going to boost you up, but it boosted him up 25 places because the system doesn't have an enormous amount of data. At this point, though, a quarter of the way through the season, I feel like the results should be pretty reasonable.
And I mean, if you look at the stats, and obviously this is boosted by Washington Justice winning 4 matches, and then they lost to Florida, but still they won 4 matches, and that's going to boost their stats. But if you actually look at Bebe's Ana rankings, I think he's like number 1 in like 3 categories, which is like offensive assists, defensive assists, and there's a different one. I think he's like 2nd in final blows per 10 on Ana. So you can't find that here. You need secret intelligence for that, I think. Yeah. So like the stats really back him up, and obviously it's going to be high because of that. But it has part of him going 4-0 with Washington Justice. Sure. That really helped out. So
yeah. I think my final thought for the Fuel, in my personal opinion, is that something we talked on but we didn't touch on too much, is that this team's tempo is incredible. Their tempo is like legitimately insane. Like no one else was able to keep like such a ridiculous amount. And they also consistently did plays that like made a ton of sense with what their comps were playing. Like when they were playing the Sim May Rush, they would constantly abuse the Sim TP to put Fearless behind them to set up like shatters. Like they would do stuff that actually made a lot of sense with their comps, and like everything they did was really purposeful for the most part. And I was super, super impressed. And I was also I was waiting for Fuel to slip up about that early interview you talked about, Matt, where Rush was like, yeah, we don't need the meta. And I'm like, so far, I'm like, well, he might actually just be right. He might actually just be right. We don't need the meta. He's playing this so expertly. And also, I'm just happy too in that, in my personal opinion, I know Fearless got like the player of the match here for this final match, but legitimately for me, this was the day of Doha. And like Doha looked like old Element Mystic Korean contenders Doha here. He looks so good. Like even just this moment right here, he won them. He just won them the map in the series because he got the neutral hack on Fleta, got them to go there, and then he forced them all back and hit the EMP.
Fielder finally gets to celebrate with his team, but
except
they
all
run away. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Doha was fantastic, and it wasn't just his Sombra, although clearly he had the best Sombra that we've seen so far this year. There's no argument about that in my mind.
Yeah.
But his Echo was also exceptionally good, and not just offensively to pair with Fearless, but he was also playing it defensively to punish opposing Winstons too in a really smart manner. Not too many of the cooldowns were wasted. He was frequently in good positions where he was able to do that, and just the pairing of that aggression with the defense was pretty great from him. Yeah, I thought he played a fantastic role in this team.
Also had a good
something
Genji.
that normally he hasn't been able to play such a carry role before. If you think about his position on like the Dallas Fuel last year, for example, or even on prior teams too, he's normally been second fiddle most of the time, but actually it was more Sparkle who was pushed into the supportive role this time because he was forced to fill the Tracer or the Soldier or whatever else needed doing in order to supplement Doha. But all of their strategies revolved around Doha and Fearless and putting them in the best positions to succeed.
So their schedule for this next upcoming tournament is London, San Francisco, Florida, and the Titans.
Okay, well, those are two pretty guaranteed wins.
Yes.
But I don't think that Dallas, even though you would, I think almost everyone would, and you should rank them as number one in your power rankings right now after the May Melee, because they were a very competent team during the regular season, and then they peaked and blasted everyone. And even the games that were close, they almost should have been more dominant in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's super reasonable. But I don't think that necessarily means that they're going to go like 4-0 in the next stage.
No.
There are some metas that aren't as open as this and malleable to your will. And I think that they found a meta that they could form to their own choosing. That isn't always going to be the case. I think this is a bit of an exception of a meta rather than how the norm should be seen as being one that's extremely open. You can play a lot of stuff and play to your own strengths. If they're forced into something that requires much more of a, they're forced into a Widowmaker meta, I think they still have some room to go to persuade me that they'll always be able to find the answer, no matter what the situation is.
Do we want to talk about the answer?
Now is a great time. Yes, Jonathan, pull back the curtain. Thankfully, Hastro didn't wait until tomorrow to announce it.
Oh my God. Did you think they did it on purpose or was it accidental?
You're welcome, Fuel fans, okay? They let me go to have the budget for Pine, okay? You guys, you're lucky. You guys are real lucky that happened, okay? So you can thank me later with money.
Yeah, he's got to go fund me open.
With a job. You can thank me with a job later.
All right, here's the thing. Okay. I'm not going to be the first one to give an opinion on this.
All right,
I would like to hear you guys' opinion first.
I will. What is the chance that Pine is not completely washed at this point? Because the guy was already doing some wonky shit by the end of his career in 2018. And we know that he was a great talent, but he was very inconsistent. The Spider Pine shit at the end of 2018 and the fact that the hit scan role has just gone so far beyond what those guys were doing at the beginning of the Overwatch League. What are the chances that he actually comes back and is impactful?
Supposedly the coaching staff, I guess he trialed for Dallas in the offseason and was impressive enough for them to reconsider it when the situation with Xe came up.
Right, but impressive enough to reconsider him while all other options are off the table because they're signed to other teams.
I think this also shows that if Dallas hadn't had peaked, I wonder if another team would have traded one of their players to the Dallas Fuel. with the Dallas Fuel playing the way they are, you're the Shock. Are you going to give them Glister? Like, are you like if you're the Atlanta Rain, like seeing how they're playing, are you just going to hand them Edison and be like, here you go? Like, I just don't think any team. Oh, and I don't think any team is going to try and go out of their way to make this team that already looked sick having a hit scan, giving them one. Like
before we actually address my question, I want someone to do I want us to do a genuine, reasonable summary of Pine's career, because a lot of the fans of the Overwatch League right now, they probably won't have watched this, to be honest. This was still what, 2.5 years ago when Pine was actually playing, right?
Yeah,
this was quite a while back.
This was taking place, and this was in season 1, wasn't it? So this was like this was more than 2.5 years ago. This was like 3 years ago.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. He played up until what, July, August of 2018.
Yeah, and then he pretty much just didn't really play again after that consistently. So
how good was he?
He was looking like the best. He was looking like the best Widow in Overwatch League for a time.
He was
that kind of fell off, in my opinion.
Probably even like McCree and stuff like that for a while too, right?
Yeah,
like stage 1 and 2.
Yeah,
like his McCree.
This is about as good as you can get at a landing spot, though. I mean,
so talking about summarizing his career, then I can't remember the exact details, so please, tell me if I'm wrong here. I can't remember exactly, but over time, he sort of like faded out of the lineup. Was it because of like consistency?
Well, I mean,
like you had Sabiolbi and Libero that were way more consistent.
Well, the meta shifted. The meta shifted for a while. So Hitscan got less relevant because it was Genji Tracer Dive in early season 1. And like it was started out with Hitscan a lot. Then we shifted to a dive. And then stage 4 went back to Hitscan. And then there was New York was like doing a bunch of weird New York shit and like swapping people around and stuff.
We're playing Libero on Widowmaker at some point.
Yeah, they played Libero on hit scan,
which wasn't
like
bad.
Also we had consistency issues. Then season 2 rolls around, Goats happens. Then we also have like he wants to go home, so he just essentially doesn't play at all for season 2. So like season 2 doesn't even count because we essentially didn't see him at all. Goats happened. It doesn't even. It's a wash. We just have season 1 data in terms of Overwatch.
But that's an important point because like. That's who Pine is. Like, he's very inflexible. He plays Widowmaker and long-range hit scan, and that's about it. He doesn't have a tracer game. He got replaced by... I mean, didn't Sabiolbi play Widowmaker in Season 1 too?
Yeah, he played
they played a bunch of people over him.
Yeah.
But that's quite similar to Exy in that sense. Pine, right? Like, his hero pool is actually quite similar to Exy's.
Yeah, Exy doesn't really...
Sure. But I'd argue that Pine is even more explosive. And I think that's like what I just want to do. If you haven't watched the Overwatch League prior to like the last couple of seasons, Pine was a very volatile player, like very explosive. His aim was incredible because he plays on like this absurd sensitivity. So it's a bit hit and miss. It's a bit like the Korean Taimu, like very hit and miss, explosive. But he didn't show the greatest game sense. Positioning, stuff like that. And so oftentimes New York almost like we're going to play Libero or Sabiolbi instead because they're more reliable, that if Widow doesn't work, they can flex more comfortably. And like their positioning game is usually more on point than Pine's.
And they also, can you find taking their time too.
Kurt, can you find the clip of Spider Pine? I believe it was NYXL playing against the LA Valiant on Gibraltar.
On Gibraltar.
Yeah, it was on the Gibraltar 3rd. But that play to me, which wasn't just a single time when they tried it, actually. That was 2 times in that one match, and then they also tried it again in a later match, too. Just kind of typifies what that team was going for with Pine in the roster, where it's like crazy aggressive stuff. They're not trying to set him up for success. They're just like, YOLO. See if it works. Rely on your individual mechanics. I feel like the game's progressed way beyond that. I think if Pine comes back and he's good, he deserves an enormous amount of credit for still being good. You should not expect this guy to be good right now, in my opinion. And if he is good, you should give him a ton of credit for stepping up his game and relearning how to play at a much higher level. The difference in play right now compared to 2018 when he played is just mammoth. The difference is it's not possible to put it into words. Like this shit is just crazy. Like no one's even...
I mean, look at the players on that screen. Look, we got Custom on Mercy. Got Agilities on Brigida right now. Like, what's happening here?
He didn't
like,
hit
what
a
are we looking
single
at?
shot.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't hit a shot, so it wasn't. But even like going for a play like
half
that
of these players are out of the league, right?
Yeah.
It's just, well, Pine's in now, Mono's still here, Jonak.
But also just
Animo,
the positioning,
Libero,
the pace of play,
and
the way that people understand how to abuse and punish people's poor positioning. All of this is elevated astronomically since 2018. So if Pine is still good, he must have improved a lot. Because you have to improve to keep up with the pace of play. His aim might still be good, but you have to get that game sense shit down.
Rush said that it's become more scarce to find adequate players. He knew that other teams would not give up their starting roster players. It's quite difficult to find the right player, though we resorted to looking for a player in Korea, and they held open tryouts in Dallas as a team, and something they did during the offseason in Korea, and they kind of kept his name in the fold after those tryouts.
Right.
They're not having him play until probably the later half of this next stage to practice with him, but then also give him time to get his visa and stuff and come to Dallas.
Yeah.
So the hope is that they can just like kind of like build synergy with him, and he can like kind of practice on the high ping and then move him to Dallas, and then they can start to play. And then they said that we're going to start working on things now that he has to improve, and then pinpoint his problems to make sure he can fix those by the time he's here.
Okay. I mean,
all reasonable. That's a reasonable timeline. I do think fans currently, if you see the response, I think there is a great amount of orb of confusion and fan delusionment that is happening right now, because fans are like, yes, Pog, like Pine, we're going to win forever now. And I'm like, are we talking about the same player? Talking about the same Pine that like they benched him for Libero on HitScan because he was so inconsistent and he would do weird, crazy shit, and he hasn't played for 2 years? More than two, like honestly more?
Do you also think though, like, so Xy's like retirement thing it didn't really seem like a retirement. It seemed like I need time off to.
I mean, he's talked about constantly how he's getting ready to come back. As soon as he's ready to come back, he's going to come back.
Right. So if you're Dallas, do you just need Pine for like a stage or two, and then Xy comes back?
You just don't know. Like, there's no way of knowing.
Like, you don't know.
Right. Or do you say like, okay, like Xy will be back with us next year. We're going to have
you just commit to. I mean, with
right?
something like his, you commit to a full year. Honestly, you just commit to the full year of like for him and just see what you can do. It's just strange to me though, because like I get they ran trials, but there's other like good hit scan contenders town. You know, like there's like merit, innovation. There's a lot of like players that you can find that could come play HitScan for this team. So
this
why
might be a Pepega take? Is this a Pepega take? But maybe because he was contracted to New York Excelsior, he has an easier time getting a visa.
Maybe. I mean, honestly, that could be a really good, legitimately good reason. Or we could be underrating Pine. Like maybe Pine really is ready to come pop off. If he looks insanely pop off and he actually looks good, not only like you said, Josh, that a great storyline, but that's incredible to be not playing for years and to come back and look good at this level of the game.
Going back to that point, I do think that, you know, we talked a lot about the macro and micro, and I feel like if we stay in this kind of meta where it's all about like flexing heroes and the micro stuff and, you know, man marking and that kind of stuff is less narrowed down upon, I feel like Pine could get away with it, at least a few maps, you know, and have actually good input. Because while we talk a lot about how the Overwatch League play has improved, players are way better now than they've ever been before, some of that does translate to ranked. Like, so if he just continues to play ranked and it's like top 100 or whatever, you know, playing Widowmaker, Ash, stuff like that, some of that positioning game will carry over. And I'm not in any way saying that like people who get like top 10 or whatever, they're immediately Overwatch League players. Not in any way, shape, or form. But I'm saying that some of that gap that he's missed out on Overwatch League play, I feel like he could catch up on in ranked. And from there on, the extra like 25-30%, I feel like he could get in scrims. And he's not going to be like he's probably not even going to be like BQB, who's just like an overall really solid hitscan player who's like can pop off on multiple hitscan heroes. Like Pine, to me, if he just gets subbed in on certain maps where you really need a Widowmaker or maybe even really need an Ashe, I feel like that's going to be enough on sometimes. And I feel like if he were to get away with it, I feel like in these kind of metas, he could.
Like what? It's like how Chengdu uses Jimmy, right? They just put him in when
not even.
There's no fucking. I mean, not even. I mean, that may even be a stretch. Pine may literally be like, if you are gonna fucking insta lock McCree, Ashe, and Widow, and you never have to switch off of it.
He's like putting Violet on DPS. I feel.
Yeah,
that's what I think Pine's gonna be like.
Yeah, where he's not gonna play anything else.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
I mean, Pine could also play the Widow, right? So I'm not saying the hero pool's the same, but I think it's going to be the same feel where it's like, oh, fuck, they're running Pine. They're going to play exactly like this. They're going to play hard aggressive, pocket the McCree, and the McCree's going to do crazy shit, and they have to keep him alive because he doesn't have a different gear. And I think if he comes out and he looks like Ants, for example, when he was playing McCree, you know? I'm not saying like Widow, right?
Yeah.
But like when Ants played the McCree and he was just hitting shots all over the place, but actually playing really smartly with his team as well, that's way overperforming, you know? If you come out and you're playing like that, you are mad overperforming our expectations for Pine. And it's possible, but I don't think it should be an expectation for the fans that is going to happen.
I think if there's one thing that I think is problematic with playing Pine, it worries me that I feel like they'd abandon some of the things that made them successful.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you this question, Jonathan. Do you think they would have been successful if they continued playing with Xe? Do you think they would have been successful if they had Pine from day one? Or would they have become meta slaves?
I don't think so. With the way that rushes describe things.
I see your point, I do. But I feel like I feel like the team is smart enough to the point where even if they had Xe, they wouldn't just have beep boop. We play McCree all the time now. Like really? I feel like they're still.
I disagree. I think they would have played McCree all the time. I think what they did in the preseason was force McCree when they shouldn't have been playing McCree. I think that the Xe plays McCree even on Paris when there was an Ashe meta. He was out there playing McCree in the Summer Showdown. They were playing fucking Genji McCree. I think Xe loves playing McCree. I think Xe pops off of McCree, so they're inclined to play it. And I don't think they would have explored as much, and I don't think Dallas would have won the main melee if Xe was here. And I know that's a wild opinion, but... What, sorry?
No, I think it has merit. I absolutely think it has merit. I think it's a very interesting point because it's sort of formed their approach to practice this stage anyway. It's like, hey, we're the underdogs. Hey, we're the people who can't play McCree. And we're going to make this work. You know, it fosters a kind of mindset, and mindset is everything. How you approach practice, how you approach matches. So it definitely fostered our mindset, not being able to play McCree. And at the end of the day, it benefited them hugely. So I think your point is merit.
All right. Okay. Let's move on from Spider Pine and let's talk about Paris, because Paris parted ways, I think they said, with Neptuno shortly after our previous episode, I think. And they've now signed Dridro to the main support. So Paris Eternal are one of the first teams to actually make a move, and it's before even the first quarter of the season had ended. And it's not a move, as far as I'm aware, that was forced upon them. It seems like the way it reads, to be honest, is mostly the decision of the coaching staff. Because when Neptuno says that they parted ways, he mentions the fact that he was underperforming, which I don't think it's common for players to be like, I think I'm underperforming, please find a replacement for me. Normally that comes from the top. I know Neptuno's very competitive. I feel like he would have preferred to try and improve rather than been replaced. So it reads to me like Paris were looking for a replacement.
But they said specifically mutually parted ways, which is a very specific terminology.
Is it? That's the same thing that people say all the time.
I mean, I guess it's true. It could be PR speak. You're right. It could be
people
PR
use
speak.
that as PR speak constantly.
Yeah.
But okay, what do we think about this? I know that Paris Eternal doesn't move the needle, everybody, but they had some all right looks. They won some decent maps off some. Or they won some maps off some decent teams, I should say. What does this do to the team, if anything? We picked Dridro for our Fantasy World Cup roster for France.
Does it just keep them in the same spot, but maybe a little bit better? Like, I don't really think this, like...
I mean, I don't even think Dridro... I mean, Dridro has a potentially maybe a better Mercy than Neptuno. I'd agree with that. I would say that, but a better Lucio? a better like Brigida or like anything? Like, have we even seen? I mean, has anyone even seen dridro play like fucking Brigida or shit? Like, has anyone even seen that? Like, to me, I look at this and I'm like, okay, we've replaced one European main support with another, and like, I don't know. It's like,
all right, here's the thing.
Indifferent, yeah, I'm indifferent to it.
Paris Eternal.
Yeah.
In face. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's not happening.
They're gonna play checkmate.
They're gonna play checkmate.
They're gonna play checkmate.
I mean, I like the pickup. I think if they were to replace Neptuno with anyone, I think dridro is the pick. And I'm gonna admit, I haven't watched a ton of dridro, but I keep hearing about dridro and how he's doing great in contenders and how he's really good. So here's his chance to really perform. So one of the better main supports in European contenders from everything I've heard. So and I do think that like on the Neptuno thing, I do think that maybe he was fed up a little bit, which is like, I've been in this league now or I've been playing Overwatch now for 5 years. And like, I don't want to say he's old, but he's getting there. He's one of the older players in the league. I think he was the oldest player in the league before he retired.
Is he really?
Not retired.
Right.
Where he, I think he's like 28 or something. Wait, am I getting this right?
Oh man,
I think
if he's late 20s, he's definitely
20s.
already up there. But I don't know.
I mean, who was older? Coolmat before he retired, and
he's 29 actually. He turned 29 this year.
Then he was 100% the oldest.
So I feel like if and Costa talked about this on his stream as well. It's like at that point, if you're on like Paris Eternal and like, oh shit, we gotta grind from the bottom. It's like I would understand if he were a bit like, fuck, I can't be arsed with this shit again. Like, if he wanted to take a break and not just have to like work all the way from the bottom to try to make this team great. Yeah. I kind of get it a little bit. So if anything, I think bringing in like a fresh talent like dridro, who's only hearing good things about, could be a nice boost of energy for this team. We're probably going to see moments where dridro underperforms, but at the same time, fresh, breath of fresh air, new energy.
I doubt it will hurt them, this move.
Yeah.
And I do think there's only places to go but up for Paris, because they are the ones out of all the other
only
teams.
Places to go but up. So you're anticipating them to go downwards from here.
I mean, the only way they can go, is up. That's what I mean to say.
Okay.
That's where they can go. It's just they can keep going up, because they're the ones out of all the other what we describe as Dollar Tree general teams, that they would be like, they would be by far the most potential from what I've seen.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
Dollar Tree general team.
They looked all right. I mean, they looked okay, right? And dridro's got Khan in the back line. He's not going to look terrible, I think. Khan's pretty damn good. I don't know whether I have much hope for Paris. I don't think this moves the needle either way, but it's cool that another guy from European contenders is getting. I just
Korea.
Yeah, I just automatically said Korean contenders, because every time I'm talking about contenders, it's always Korean, because they're the players that are always getting drafted into the league. But this at least proves that there's a pathway now for the European players. I hope that more people in Korea. Fucking done it again. I hope more people in European contenders take this as motivation, that they do now have a pathway into the league that's very concrete, right? Like the road is laid down. If you're good, you have an opportunity to go into London or go into Paris. You might get your heads kicked in when you're in the Overwatch League, but you could get there. So that's a new thing that hasn't really been available for the scene in the past. Okay, Jonathan did some mathematics on Twitter.
On what?
And he's going to have to walk me through it, because this was his little brainchild, this segment. The Overwatch League MVP odds.
I asked if we wanted to do this, and no one responded, so I guess we're doing it.
I do want to do it, because I saw your Twitter comment, and I thought it was actually pretty interesting. But I wanted you to explain it to the people, because a lot of people don't do betting, and if they do betting, then it's not everywhere expresses odds in the same way either. So like your plus 300, plus 1200, people are like, I don't get it. Am I supposed to be higher? Am I supposed to be lower? How does it work?
So, I mean, we don't use the plus system in Sweden either, so I have to get used to it. But it's pretty... Chill out, dude. Like, this fucking guy. I haven't even, said anything, and he's like, baby. That's Math Morello.
Sounds like a Pokemon. Sounds like a Pokemon there.
Where's checkmate?
Okay, let's explain the odds. Okay, so actually a lot of people in the replies, they didn't understand either. But how it works in America is, if it's like plus 300, it's like you would make $300 on a $100 bet. So it's like 3 times the money, plus 500, 5 times the money, plus 1,200, 12 times the money. So it's pretty straightforward when you look at it that way. It takes some time to get accustomed to if you're not used to it, but essentially, yeah, you get it. It's multiples return on your money. So if you have lower odds, like plus 300, you get a lower return if you put your money down. But I think that Fearless is the front runner now. So why did I do this? Well, I watched some football, basketball, whatever, and I think these conversations are very interesting throughout the season. And we don't really have weightings to like MVP runnings and stuff like that in the Overwatch scene, because we have these podcasts and we're like, well, Violet is probably like an MVP candidate, but also like Fled is an MVP candidate, Carp is an MVP candidate, but we can't ever like put it down what the weighting is, like how much someone is leading by and like how much some people are behind. So I just wrote this up. I don't even know anything about odds making. This is probably like bullshit. So there's a loophole here somewhere. But
yes, the front runner wouldn't be giving you 3x your money if you bet on it. That would actually be a negative 300.
But it's so early in the season that there's a lot of risk of Fearless, getting sick or like someone else really performs for a team. Like it's so early, so naturally the odds are very high.
Wait, negative 300, as in you lose $300?
No. That's just how
you have to
write it.
Negative 300 would mean that you had to bet 300 to get 100 back. It's
okay. I was going to say, it's like, damn, betting's a scam.
It's America's dumb way of avoiding ratios. For some reason, America just hates ratios. So that instead of saying 1-3 or 3-1 odds, they use fucking plus and hundreds. I have literally no idea why.
Yeah. But it looks clean, so I put it this way. Anyway.
I think the point of it, though, is to have a conversation about who the front runners would be and how far ahead they are, using the odds as just a weighting mechanism. I think it's a cool list. I think clearly Fearless is the front runner right now, though, right?
Yes.
Is that something everyone's agreed with? I think you're being a bit low though on Chengdu as well. And I know that I'm saying that having Houston Outlaws not having made the May Melee, but I could definitely see like over the course of the regular season that we had in the May Melee, people were talking about Chengdu so much, and he was so decisive for Houston in their wins. And I know that it was very much like a main tank meta, which you don't always have as well. But I feel like Chengdu might creep up this table quite a bit as well if Houston continue to have good performances.
I would say as well, given the circumstances of the team, I think you can make an argument for Alarm or Carpe over.
Are we only debating this list, by the way?
No. I mean, obviously, people like Lip should have probably been on this list.
Yeah.
For example, like that's a good shot. I missed out on some, limit character or a character limit on Twitter. So it's like, if you want to add or like something, go ahead.
I think Carpe or Alarm would be higher for me just off of the circumstances with the team and then how they played in obviously they didn't make the Final Four, but being first in APAC for the first stage, I think is something that definitely nobody expected, considering we were like thinking they potentially were losing to the Valiant. I'd probably have them around a little bit higher up. Much.
What about Doha as well? Doha was fantastic. So Doha and Lip are the two big standouts that aren't on the list in my head. I mean, I've just skimmed through it, and those were the first two names that sprung to mind as like people that were missing. Because I think if Doha continues to have metas where he can stand out on Sombra, which teams have been able to run a shit ton of Sombra in previous years, she's pretty additive to almost all the metas. It's not every meta, but she can be used. She's very flexible. And what he's been able to do on Echo too. And then Lip is just... What I love about Lip is he can, at any point, also be an amazing Sombra. He didn't show it in this tournament, but all last year he was the best Sombra that we had in the league, in my opinion. And if at any point he pulls that out, whilst also still being able to have carry performances on McCree, on Hanzo, on Ash, on Widowmaker, on Tracer now as well, that's got to be a candidate frontrunner.
Yeah. Absolutely. I will admit that I didn't want to weight it too much towards the Melee teams, because then I would have ended up with a list that had like top 15 would have been 5 of the Dallas Fuel players. And, I would have had to have Isayaki on this list, Void on this list, probably. So like I wanted to bring at least like 2 people per team maybe. I put Moth on there, not because I think that, that well, there's high odds for Moth, but what I'm saying is like people talked about Moth very early in the season. He's a standout player, star player. He was in the conversation going into the season. So I wanted to list like the star players and, you know, top 1 or 2 players from each team. But obviously, Lip Doha, you know, Void, maybe even someone from Florida Mayhem as well, Fielder. All those guys are obviously among the front runners, but I wanted to get a nice spread of teams. And
I think Yaki should be higher myself. Legitimately, I think Yaki should be higher. I think Yaki literally is the make or break component for the Florida Mayhem for that team. I think Yaki literally gigapounds to another dimension. And on top of that, I also think something that should be on here for Gladiators, I think Birdwing should be on here over Moth. I think Birdwing should be on there over the Moth.
All right. Yeah, I could see
I think Birdwing is actually going to be like, because they started playing him and they started looking a lot better. And if they keep playing him, I think Gladiators might actually fulfill some of this potential if they keep playing Birdwing, is my personal view. So
yeah, I mean, I'd definitely like to see the Gladiators really step up as well. I think they've been one of the teams that's been absolutely absent from all of our discussions when they were playing such a crucial part in the preseason hype was revolving around them so fundamentally, and they've just not been present in any of them. Interesting as well. Not too many shock players on the list either.
Yeah, no, just Violet.
Yeah, could definitely be a story as we go through as well. I like the idea, though. It's very cool. Over to 2 players, then, who have been added to the Philadelphia Fusion. We actually, or not added, but extended for the Philadelphia Fusion. We brought this up earlier on. I think it was Jonathan that was talking about it. Tobi and HOTBA had their contracts renewed or extended for the whole of the rest of the season. Presumably because of the fact that Poco and Funny Astro are unlikely to be able to enter career in the short term. But also, I think these guys have really deserved it. They have stepped the fuck up.
Yeah, they fucking bailed this team out. The situation where this team could have been absolutely tragic, and with how important 4 games to a season is with the short season, yeah, like they don't have these 2 players and they don't perform like this. This team could be like their season could have just been derailed right off the start.
I think it would have been. I straight up think it would have been. And they even, I mean, Christopher did an interview with GG Recon. He did an interview with Yiska where he said, if 1 week before the season began, their team was a bit papige. They were all over the place. Like, the rumors that were floating about them like losing to a bunch of teams and like even losing to the Valiant, I think the rumor was, with their 250 ping players. Basically, their team was a bit of a mess, and they got it together in the week before the tournament, which I assume is because Tobi and HOTBA had enough time to really integrate with them properly and like figure out the meta and how they wanted to play. Can you imagine if that team is what Philadelphia Fusion actually were put together at the beginning of the season, was like such a disappointment for the caliber of everybody else that's involved? It almost seems like it would be incomprehensible that they would not be at least competent. But with these enormous player changes right before the season, it was a real world in which that would have happened.
What does it say about New York, where a HOTBA mono tank line
potentially?
Yeah, I mean goes 4-0.
Dude, what does it say about Seoul to cut Tobi? I don't think they cut Tobi technically. I think Tobi left.
Did he?
But I'm not quite sure. I don't know the exact reason, honestly. Either way, the fact that they didn't offer Seoul, like Tobi, they didn't give Tobi a gesture contract. Like, Jester's out here balling out in Lambos and shit out in Korea, fucking driving around Seoul, changing cars every club, and Tobi had to leave. Like, they should have given Tobi like a crazy contract. I legitimately don't get how Tobi was a free agent for so long.
And I wonder, I mean, we talked about like, hey, they're gonna put Poco and Funny Astro right back into this team as soon as they're able, and Shockwave, right, as soon as they are able to get to Korea. Which I was looking for a tweet. I think Rawson said that like they're getting closer to being able to, with how things are going with travel and whatnot. What if they have another 6 stage? What if you're like halfway through the season, you're like, I don't know, 6-2 or something like that? Like, I still probably would put those other players in because they're so good, but you definitely would have a harder time doing it though.
You're inevitably going to have a period of downtime where you look worse as you reintegrate those players, even if the players are better.
100%.
Because that's just the reality of it. They're going to be a bit rusty. They're going to come in. They're not
change of their life completely, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be worse when they sub those players back in, but that doesn't mean that it's the wrong decision. Now, having said that, I mean, I've been so impressed with how HOTBA's been playing so far. It's been like years beyond what I thought. Years? Why did I use a measure of time? It's been so much better than I thought it would be anyway.
The Philly fans are going to be out of control. They're going to be out of control. Their schedule,
what are they not?
Their schedule is New York, Chengdu, Guangzhou, Valiant.
Oh, wow. I mean, they are just guaranteed. They're guaranteed 2-0, probably 3-0.
8-0, yeah.
Could be, yeah. It could just be as 8-0 stage.
I'm sorry.
The Philly fans. I just won't escape them. I'm
Honestly,
going to hear their cries.
But though, if you were going to work these players back in, I mean,
Now's the stage that you would want.
You look even deeper, right? Like even into July. Guangzhou, Shanghai, Chengdu, New York. That's like, you have like some tough tests in there with like Shanghai and Chengdu, but you have some other games that are like winnable. At that point, if you're like 7-1 or 8-0, like you can lose a game or two, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
They've
the end of the
given themselves
world.
a cushion.
Yes, especially if they could get to 7-1 or 8-0 and not get the bonus league points from the May Melee. But let's say they actually get to Hawaii for the June Joust and get like a bonus point or two there. You could have like 10 league points.
Yeah.
You know, with 8 games to go.
I got one prediction right in my pick'ems bracket this weekend. So it was a tough weekend for me, okay?
Okay.
For some reason, I had a bunch of upsets with Dallas and stuff, and it just, what am I doing? So I'm clinging on to this, okay? This is my only smug topic of the week. Yep. It's Tobi and HOTBA working out for the Philadelphia Fusion. So I'll take my smug credit right now. But
also, though, Jonathan, to interrupt the smugness, I think you also said that you also said that it would be a honeymoon period, didn't you? That there would be some honeymooning going on. Do you think that a honeymoon implies that at some point it would not work as well? Like a honeymoon normally means a team gets good at the beginning and then they kind of trail off a little bit or they get figured out or whatever. Do you feel like that's going to happen? Do you stand by that?
I'm pretty sure I mentioned it on the last week's episode too, but I do think that the meta was really good for them. I think playing around Carpe the way they did, I think really enabled Manu and HOTBA to play their best game as well. It was nice when they stepped on the tempo a little bit. I can't remember exactly, but they did play a lot of Echo Tracer, I think, with Rascal. That they stepped on the tempo a little bit. If they had done that more against Shanghai, I want to believe they would have beat them. Yeah, I think you guys would know better than me, but I think they could have had a better chance.
I think they would have. That match between Shanghai was so close. They definitely could have won that. So,
but I am worried that, but depending on the hero pool meta we get, that it might not work into Mono HOTBA's and Tobi's favor as much. So as much as I really like their past performance this stage, and I think they probably would have made top 2 if they qualify for May Melee, I think they would have been stronger than Chengdu and Florida. As much as I like them, I do think that it's going to get a bit rougher. Obviously not with the matchups ahead of them, because they're favorites in like 3 of them. But, depending on the meta, I do think that they could struggle a bit more than the really good things we saw from them.
The great point you bring up, though, is that if they had qualified, with the benefit of hindsight, I really do think that they would have probably been the second place team. But I mean, of course, that relies on them actually putting it together when it matters. But
sure.
They are 4-0 in the regular season. They've done that so far. They just tripped up in that qualifying game and potentially threw away their spot of getting in. Should we be feeling bad about Philly that they don't have 2 extra league points right now? Should we be feeling like they've missed out on an opportunity there? Because I don't feel like that, but maybe I should. Maybe I should be feeling like, oh, fuck, they've kind of beefed that.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, if they would have made it, got second, which I think they would have.
Yeah.
I think they would have clearly been the second best team there. They'd be in first in the overall league with 6 points.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, isn't it?
The next highest in APAC being at 4, and with just the schedule we talked about with how easy it is, they could have almost gotten to 10 league points halfway through the year. They would have been so far ahead of everybody else.
That really could end up biting them in the long term. I don't know whether it will, because it looks like they're maybe just going to run away with it in APAC anyway.
But because they don't play against like Shanghai really often, and they could still do something in the June Joust. But those are two big free points to not free, but those are 2 big points to throw away.
Roston also said like so in the tweet about like Toby said that he'll continue to be a strong part of the team even when they fully arrive, and then said soon. And then some of the info just kind of like in the thread is basically, I'm trying to find the dates. The Korean government lifted the suspensions on visas to UK passport holders.
Oh, sick.
On April 19th, and then stated that it would take 3 weeks to process, plus the 2 weeks of the mandatory quarantine. So, like, you would think like end of May at the earliest, like June. So you think like if you can get through this next stage, win those 4 games, you have a bit of a break. Then at like the halfway point, you can start to work some of them in.
Do you run them for the June Joust? If you qualify for the June Joust and you're like 7-1, 8-0, do you sub Funny Astro and Poker back in for the tournament?
Yeah, you definitely wait. You would not risk it for the league points. You would not risk it. It wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It would be you'd think about it long and hard though. You'd be like, hey, we got Shockwave here, we got Funny Astro, we got.
If you dominated APAC and you come back into June and like you haven't had any practice with them, I don't think you should be thinking about it long and hard. No coach should be thinking about it.
Would you run them in scrims though, Connor?
Different communication system as well because they're all Korean now.
Right. Yeah. Wouldn't you try them in a scrim block and just see? Like if they were better, you wouldn't even bother.
It's a waste of time. No, like you wait till after the tournament's done. Like that's 100%. I 100% believe that. That's the right. It's the logical call. It's the right call. You've been playing them now with 2 seats.
The thing about where we thought this team was at the beginning of the season, and then now we're talking about them at the halfway point of the year. They could be number 1 in APAC with like a pretty sizable lead, and halfway through the season, add players of the caliber of EQO, Shockwave, Funny Astro, and Poco. Like that's fucking crazy.
It is.
It's like if you were eating a really good bowl of like spaghetti bolognese and you're like, oh, this is actually like quite good. Like positively surprising me here. Really
I
good
love what I'm
bolognese.
in that situation.
And then suddenly, as you're eating along like the spaghetti bolognese, you're served like ice cream, and you're like, wait, like that's really good ice cream, but like I shouldn't have it now because I'm eating spaghetti bolognese. It doesn't make sense. I can't just transition
classic combination
from spaghetti bolognese to ice cream. No, I'll finish the bolognese first, and then I'll have the ice cream. I want to like have both.
But in your scenario as well, you wait until you eat a lot of the spaghetti bolognese, and then you're like, now I'll have my ice cream. And you mix them together, It
doesn't work. See?
I think Philly would have given Dallas the best test.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
I think Philly versus Dallas would have been a sick game.
I think that could have been good. I don't know whether it would have been better than Shanghai, though. I think
it's tough to know.
We did it. Yeah, it's tough to know. Like, it's pure speculation. But actually, the winner bracket final was so close when they just play like the mirror matchups. They play like the Tracer, Echo, and Sombra and that stuff. I was so surprised to see so much like hero flexibility in the finals. I really was. And I probably forget because like it was a busy weekend and all. But like, do you guys have any clues as to why we didn't see the mirror matchup again?
I think both teams just trying to adapt to each other.
Yeah.
I think neither team felt confident that they would probably be able to take it if that happened.
Like, which mirror matchup are you talking about? Exactly.
Like, they just play like the Winston, Tracer, Echo compositions against each other for like forever. And we saw a lot of like Tracer and Sombra as well. Like, I predicted Shanghai in the finals because I thought it would come down to a micro game and not so much about the macro hero flexibility and all that stuff based on what we saw in the winner bracket finals. And that's where I thought that the individual player skill on Shanghai Dragons were actually going to supersede Dallas Fuel, like Lip winning the Tracer duel. I even think like Void could have been better than Handin in the off-tank role. Isayaki versus Fielder. Like, I feel like on an individual level, Shanghai would have outperformed Dallas Fuel in the end. But instead, we moved away from the micro we saw in the winner bracket final, and then we moved back to the hero compositions. And that's where I think Dallas Fuel played a beautiful game because they were like, we can't I don't think they wanted to take that duel, and instead they were like, we're gonna play Reinhardt on guard and Li Jiang, which I didn't expect at all. Blizzard World, of course, we saw both teams go to Reinhardt comps. Yeah. It was even surprising to see Dallas Fuel pick King's Row to some extent because of how good Shanghai looked on it versus Florida Mayhem. So like, I think it was very interesting from Dallas Fuel that they were like, it felt like they opted towards like macro hero composition stuff rather than taking individual skill battles in the finals, which led to them winning. But I thought, I actually thought that like the Winston Tracer stuff was going to be like the meta, and both teams were just going to try to beat each other at it. So it was a very interesting finals.
Well, from the finals then to power rankings, because it's the bread and butter of the Overwatch scene. People love these fucking things. Did you guys see the tweet that Avril put out, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Good.
Just a pinch hand amount of tomfoolery from Avril. Just a pin from Kevin.
He just, for anyone who didn't see it, he literally just posted the league standings from Liquipedia, and there were people in the comments arguing about why he had rated them like that. They were like, Seoul over Chengdu? How'd you justify that? And he's literally just put a screenshot of Liquipedia of where the league standings were.
Love it. Oh,
I mean,
my God.
Because that's a funny comment. That's a funny post just on in and of itself, as like, you know, here it is. They're pretty spicy because the league standings at the moment are both hard to argue with, but not necessarily true either in some respects. But they're as good as anybody else's power rankings at this point, I think. And then the comments, Kurt. I mean, should we really blow people up?
Well, I mean, the first
comments?
comment is the best comment. So.
Oh, is it?
Is it? The first one is the best.
Oh, the first one is you bloody. But there were other people who really were like, I mean, that's great
like
for starters.
That?
Sorry, Avast, let's take a small tangent. Where did these pictures come from?
Yeah, what's up?
I was just in my roommate she was wanting to get into cosplay and she bought a wig, and then I tried on the wig and then she took a picture of me of it, and that's it.
Where's the goth boy picture come from?
Oh, that's me my freshman year of college. So I was 18 years old going to a Halloween party, and a friend of mine took a picture of that.
Hey, bro, you ain't gotta lie, bro. This doesn't look. It's Halloween, or is this like every day?
No, it's how I still have the outfit actually in my closet. I still have that choker and that.
What are you supposed to be dressed up as?
I was just going as a goth boy.
Yeah,
I was going as a goth boy.
You nailed it. I think
and then I got. Look, you can notice if you look at my nails, I have black nail polish on. I have some eyeliner. It's tough to tell because of the shadows, but I got all got up for that. You know.
Do you occasionally
that's a good look on you? It's better than the sloth T-shirt.
Okay, well, shut up, Matt.
Wow. Do you ever occasionally attach a leash to the choker and just ask one of your housemates to walk
leashes.
you?
It doesn't have I'd have to add that on. Do some metal working.
Yeah.
Add that to it. But that's really all there was to it. My roommate, when I posted that picture, my other roommate then posted that picture to piggyback off of it because he wants to leech off my Twitter followers. So
yeah, you gotta get
what was going there.
Yep.
I mean, you look like an absolute goth snack there. I mean, I'm sure there are many.
Twinkie boy.
There are, I mean,
back then.
that would be a phenomenal profile picture on many dating sites, I think, but only for a certain audience.
A very certain subset.
Yeah. All right. Power rankings. What the dickens are we doing here? Global power rankings. So we want them not to be separated by region, right? We're just going straight 1 to 20.
There's no reason to now, I think. In my
Avast did it, and I commended him.
Dallas, number 1.
Yeah. I think mine were actually about as close as you could get. But, Dallas, this is where we come to do our own.
All right.
Yeah, Dallas won.
Dallas won.
I'll agree with that. Yeah.
Shanghai 2.
This one's hotly contested, actually.
Philadelphia 3.
You could actually make the argument to have Fusion 2 still if you wanted to, but I don't agree with it, so I keep Dragons 2.
Fusion 3?
Wait, sorry. Why would you have the argument for Fusion to be 2?
Simply because you could argue that they choked their match versus Dragons, and if they had gone up to the Melee, they would have performed better than the Dragons.
Yeah.
If you were of the inclination. I was not. Okay. I was not of the inclination to do that. I don't think you're allowed to make that. I mean, if you're a rabid foaming at the mouth Philly fan, you could.
Philly 3.
Yeah. So I
actually had I had a hotter take. I had a hotter take. Yeah, I had Mayhem third myself.
Oh my god. Am I fucking losing my mind still rating the Shock and the Outlaws extraordinarily highly? I think that side of the bracket.
I would put.
I think if Mayhem were on that side of the bracket, they would not have made it out.
So you could put Outlaws.
I am almost very confident in that take that if
they
Mayhem
wouldn't have
were
made it out because they were gonna have to play like Fuel.
So let's do this.
Right?
Outlaws.
No. But I mean, if Mayhem were on the side of the bracket that had Outlaws and Shock, if Mayhem and Fuel had swapped places, I'm very confident that Fuel makes it out. I am not at all confident that Mayhem makes it out. I think that Mayhem. I think Shock should be
6. Yeah.
Higher. In my opinion,
honestly, I was super unimpressed with Shock. I'm not gonna lie. Granted, it's tough to tell sometimes because when you're playing against a really strong team like the Fuel was, you're gonna get a lot more errors. But I actually thought the Shock's performance was like really rough. I don't think they know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing, and I don't think the Violet McCree is a failed experiment.
Yep,
it is a failed experiment. It needs to stop. I agree. It's just a bad idea all around. In addition, like I just don't know. I don't know what they're doing. They have like 4 hitscan players on that roster. Why is Violet playing McCree?
We did just come off a week where the Shock shit stomped the Mayhem as well, and then the Mayhem, the very next week afterwards, the Mayhem run their side of the bracket and Shock gets stopped.
And I think everyone the week before would have definitely put Justice above Mayhem.
Yeah.
The reality is the Mayhem that played in the in the knockouts and the May Melee is a very different Mayhem that played in the weeks previously, in my personal opinion. So I don't think it's the same qualification. It's like I don't think Shock. I think you 100% have the Outlaws over Shock still. I'll agree with that. Yeah, I don't think Shock should be that high. I just think their current grasp of the meta is abysmal.
Yeah, they're 4 consecutive games. I'm with Avast.
Okay, fair enough. Who have we got in 7th place then? I think it's got to be Justice, right? Just because. Then actually, should Chengdu be above Justice? Actually,
I put Hunters over Justice myself.
Oh yeah, all right, let's do it.
I put Hunters over Justice.
Yeah, I'm always down to put the Hunters.
I think. Yeah, I mean the Justice went 4-0 in the regular season, but I don't think their competition.
They feel a bit one-dimensional.
I mean, I say their competition wasn't that great, but they actually did perform a good game against Dallas Fuel. Yeah. I think they're a bit one-dimensional, yeah.
But also, Fuel was still figuring themselves out, too, in that match. It was early in the season. They were still getting their shit together as well. I don't think that was actually peak Fuel yet either.
No, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't.
Soul Dynasty, Kurt, 9.
Wait, really? Is that... No, it probably is. Yeah, I think it is.
I put Dynasty there. I put Gladiators right below them.
Gladiators, 10.
Yep.
Wait, Gladiators 10.
How is Gladiators still sneaking into 10th?
Yeah.
I mean, Atlanta's 1 and 3. Yeah.
There's no one to put above them.
It is wild, Toronto? Though. Would you put Toronto above?
No, definitely not. So. If you compare Gladiators like how they're looking, I just don't have the faith. And also, this is coming from the Defiant simp. I don't think Defiant right now. They just looked they looked a lot rougher around the edges than Gladiators did in their previous matches.
I'd put Defiant 11th though.
What was the most recent?
The only. Why are you speed running this? Like you're fucking playing.
Yeah, Matt. Also, Matt's been solo talking for the past 10 minutes.
Jesus
while we're debating. Matt's just been fucking.
I just keep shouting teams to Kurt.
Where do you have to be?
Okay, 11.
I think.
Shut up, Matt.
The only reasonable way is if you were super recent gameplay and you were like, let's just put the Hangzhou Spark at 11 because Shy fucks. But it's like I didn't even watch that game, but I feel like that was like one game. We don't know fully yet how good Hangzhou Spark is, right?
Well,
so
1 second. Yeah. Okay, I got to take a look at my own rankings because I had a whole deliberation. Let's see. Let me see if I agree with everything we've got.
What is the Gladiators' most recent matches?
Oh,
what can someone remind me of their schedule? Like
they played
Spitfire
and Boston, right?
They beat Boston Uprising, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Well, fuck me. There's a big drop off between 9 and 10, in my opinion, and
there is.
drop off.
Oh, yeah. There is. That's why I actually had some tier breaks between some of these teams, because I used the Solomon ranking. So I had some tier breaks because I think Dynasty and Gladiators and shit need to be like a whole tier below the Shock like outlaws.
Yeah, I would
Hunters.
agree with that. Yeah.
And also, actually, now I go back more. I actually had Hunters. I had even a crazier take, and I personally believe that the Hunters' talent is still so large that I had them still currently above Outlaws and Shock.
Oh my god, you're crazy.
Yeah,
I'm not on board for that. I am not on board for that.
Yeah.
You have beaten me into submission with them being at 5th and 6th. I won't stand for the Pandas.
I know. That was my
them.
spicy take. That was my real spicy take. Was Hunters
comes?
But I really am still not convinced that. Okay, here's the thing. I'm not convinced in the Gladiators, so now I'm rifling through my head of thinking, surely there might be another team that's capable of taking the 10th spot away from them. But when I look at all the rest, I don't know whether there is, man.
Yeah, who would you pick?
Yeah.
Who would you pick?
I mean,
like the
Toronto are the
in
most
my mind was
natural.
Toronto.
I was going to say
Spark
maybe,
or Toronto.
Maybe. So what did Toronto do recently? Didn't they go like 3-1 in the stage? Or
they went to the main melee, but they had a
pretty
pretty easy schedule. They had an easy schedule too. They played Rain, which is not like easy, but they beat them map 5. They played Justice Lost. They 3-1 Spitfire, and then they played Mayhem, and they also played Titans.
And they dropped maps. They dropped maps to Titans.
They didn't
Spitfire.
look good.
Yeah,
I think
so. Justice,
I think you're right.
I don't think Defiant
should.
I think Defiant should be below Spark. No joke. I think Spark should be above Defiant.
Okay, what did the Spark do again?
Game.
The last two. Didn't Shy play the 2 most recent games for the Spark?
Yes, and they looked so much fucking better.
Enormously better.
They lost to Shanghai, right? And then they beat Guangzhou.
Yes.
How did they look versus Shanghai? I didn't watch the Shy
They look better.
games,
so much better. Literally so much better.
But
I think.
Does Spark deserve to be about Gladiators?
I don't think Sparks earned that yet, in my opinion. That's my one. That's my
one
caveat.
I don't think Gladiators have earned shit this season. I don't think they've earned shit.
I think Gladiators with Birdwing look like a more complete team than Spark currently still.
I think that's very possible because I'm not high on either of them. But now I'm trying to rack my memory.
Feel. That's my personal feelings on them. I think it's kind of a toss-up though. If you wanted to tell me Spark was better than Glads, I'd say sure. But I think Gladiators look like a more complete team when they're playing with Birdwing.
Yeah, I wouldn't really argue it. Like.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mess around there. Okay, yeah,
but Defiant should be below Spark. I think 100%. I think Defiant's schedule is disgustingly easy.
Spark 11.
Yeah,
Defiant gotta be 12.
I would almost put Atlanta over Defiant. I'm really disappointed by Toronto.
Nope. Don't agree.
Okay, wait there. Who did Atlanta?
I mean, Shock.
Atlanta went 1 and 3, right?
Shit, right?
But that's just an indicator that Shock is not that good. That's just about Shock. That's the problem with Shock.
Iris Fox.
I mean, who has Toronto got close to beating at that level?
I mean, they beat Atlanta.
Yeah, but we're saying Atlanta and Toronto are almost the same as each other, and they went to 5, so that isn't a big indicator that one is like a lot better than the other. They're basically neck and neck. Then you look at the rest of the games that they played.
Defiant. If you rate Defiant's matches, like I personally feel like Defiant still have a better overall grasp of the meta than Rain, because Rain only know how to do 3 things: eat, hot ship, and play rush.
Yeah,
and that's all they know how to do.
I don't feel confident in the Rain until they can win maps playing different stuff and also close out a fucking series. The fact that they couldn't close out the series against the Toronto Defiant, and then they failed to close out the game against the San Francisco Shock, it's like these guys they are good. I actually think that Atlanta Rain are better than Toronto, for example, but they can't translate it into actual results, and therefore they are not actually better. Like, they have the spirit of a better team, they have the form of a better team, but then it all crumbles when they actually need to close out the games, which means they're going to be worse. If you can't do that, you are just going to lose. Doesn't matter how good you look up until the point when you
Atlanta at 13, right?
Yeah, Atlanta 13, and then I had New York right out. I had New York 14.
Is Boston better than New York?
I think they might be. Yeah, I actually think Boston might be better than New York.
Think so?
I don't think Boston's going to be tragic again. I think Boston could be pretty decent.
I don't think I've seen anything good from New York apart from Flora's McCree, basically. Like,
I might be overrating New York.
The whole team play was real poor.
I think Bianca and holy shit, I can't remember the main take now. Yakpung, yeah, I would reviewed New York Excelsior games like 2 or 3 times.
He was Toronto Yakpung.
I think it was woeful. I think their tank play was horrendous. I was really disappointed.
I think it's Paris next, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say Paris next.
So my rating was but though actually honestly I probably did overrate New York now that I think about it. But I did have Paris next. Paris should be actually a decent in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Paris is an all right team. I think they're pretty decent. I feel pretty good about this. And then we get into the true Papega tier.
Well, actually, I think it's a pretty obvious bet. I think it should be Titans. It should be Titans.
Didn't Guangzhou look better in their most recent game? Who did they play against in the final game?
They still look pretty tragic. They got 3-0'd by Hangzhou.
Oh, yeah.
They still look pretty tragic. I think Titans legit. They've taken maps off of like every team.
Yeah.
Guangzhou
Titans deserve to go there.
Yeah, I mean, Guangzhou got fucking sped run through the fucking melee.
Titans legitimately have like good pieces. Like
Have
actually
Guangzhou won
like
a map?
okay pieces.
Guangzhou has won 3 maps.
Who did they win them against?
Did
they win like one against New York or something?
Let's see.
I can't even
Guangzhou
remember.
has won maps versus. Nope. What are you talking about? They haven't won any maps.
Oh,
They haven't
really?
won maps. No, they've been every map. They won 3 maps. Oh, I should take that back. They won 3 maps, and it was the 3-0 versus the Valiant. Every other match
they haven't won.
They've been 3-0'd.
They haven't won a map outside of the Valiant.
Yeah.
I forgot they played the Valiant actually.
Are they the second worst?
I think you've got to put Charge
Spitfire
above
was
London.
I think Spitfire actually goes
You think
still
Spitfire's
slightly
the
below
bottom?
Charge.
Spitfire might be below Charge. Yeah.
I think Spitfire still goes below Charge.
Wait, is Spitfire at the bottom though? Like the actual
No,
bottom?
Valiant is the bottom. I think Valiant's the
the
bottom.
Valiant have won 1 map.
I think the Valiant's the
What
bottom.
if London won?
London won more. I think
3.
London won more maps,
They
right?
won
Yeah.
2 maps against Boston.
New York
Oh,
has
yeah.
only won 3. New York's only won 3 maps too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think New York still. Hasn't New York had like a kind of tough schedule?
Oh, and
And,
New
like-
York's 3 maps that they won just against the Valiant too.
Yeah.
Is that it?
And New York have also
Yeah,
been
but
tragic, by the way. The Papega
what was
tier
their
begins
schedule
at
like?
16, and it just
Their schedule.
spans
They
downwards.
played Hunters, Dragons, and Dynasty though, which are all like
Yeah, those are
tough
decent
teams.
teams.
You know.
But I mean, that's such a far cry away from what they were apparently doing in scrims beforehand. You
I know, they
It's
won-
like,
Exactly.
They
What a
won
fucking
one map
fall
against.
from-
They won 1 map against Hangzhou, New York, and then they got 3-0'd, 3-0, 3-0.
If we were to put tier breaks in, right? We're not actually going to put them in, but if we're just going to verbally say where they are,
Yeah.
Where are they? Let's start from the bottom actually, because I think there's a tier
hard.
break between 15 and 16.
I think there's a tier break between Spitfire, Valiant, and the rest. I think Spitfire, Valiant deserve to be on the island.
Really, like
Yeah,
out
they
on the
may see
fucking
that.
island.
I think
Right.
they deserve
Yeah,
to be on the Papige Island currently. That is the Papige Island.
Okay.
Send them off the sea.
I think there's a very close. I think it's an archipelago, maybe rather than an island, though, because
I
that
would
shit-
actually send the charge with them too.
I don't
would
think
send the charge
you can
with
maybe
them.
argue the charge, but you can't argue Titans. Titans have actually taken like maps and like
Well,
look
hold on.
okay-ish at points.
Wait,
What I would do- I would take- I would
Surely-
take Eileen and Krong and save them, and then send the rest of the charge to the island with the Spitfire and the Valiant.
But I mean, to me as well seems to be a gap between like Paris, who are maintaining some level of competency, and then
No,
the
Titans
other
could
teams
totally
who are
be Eternal
literally.
on, like, an off day or something.
I fucking think we should be having the Titans above NYXL right now as well. When we're talking about it, New York have really just not shown anything other than their win against.
No, wait, just one moment here, because Titans. Think
Just
about their
by having-
schedule, Josh.
Just by having Jonak.
Yeah,
there
no,
ranked
their
higher.
schedule was
Why-
really hard. No,
Think
You're
about
right,
the
you're
Titans'
right.
schedule. The Titans played Defiant. They played Mayhem. They took a map off Mayhem. They played Paris. They did lose to Paris actually. But they did take a map off them. And then they played Justice. They played 2 top tier teams, took maps off them, and then they played like one okayish team with Eternal and took a map
But
off
that's-
them, and another okayish team.
But
with
that's what I'm
Defiant took a
saying
map
is
off them.
that they should be given credit for that because they actually didn't look awful, whereas New York did look awful in their losses.
But we could put them above. I mean, it's a good argument. It's a good
But
argument.
New York played, I would argue, overall harder teams, right? Because
Well,
they played Dragons and Hunters.
Yeah, no, I agree, but also Justice and Mayhem are pretty fucking good.
And they won maps.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't actually think they're a better team, but what I'm saying is the
Yeah.
evidence
Yeah.
suggests that they are.
The rise of the Titans. Put them up, Kurt. Put them at 16.
No, wait. I don't know if I'm still sold on it though. I don't know if I'm still sold on it.
You don't
I don't
agree?
think I'm sold on that still. I don't think I'm sold on this.
Hey, listen,
still.
it doesn't really matter that much. They're all in a bit of a Papega tier anyway. Well,
I
my
hear
point
Kurt just
basically was
laughing.
though, 16 through 20, ship them out. I'm stricter than Avast. Get them to the
Fuck
fucking
'em.
archipelago. Get them gone.
Well, I see. So I had the tier break set up where Spitfire, Valiant were on the Papige. They were on the Papige Peninsula alone. They were there, and then I had New York, Paris, Boston, Titans, Charge in one group.
Oh,
but obviously you guys have rated Boston higher, so Boston would not be in that group. It would be like Paris, New York, Titans, Charge in a group.
Yeah. Okay. You're sneaking Paris in there too.
The Charge are so bad.
And then I think there's a clear gap.
Can we just sit in the Charge with the bottom three? I mean, come on. Like,
I mean, you could make the argument. You could. But the thing is, Charge didn't lose to Valiant. Charge didn't lose or drop maps to Valiant. I don't think Charge would lose to either of those teams ever. Or would they lose to one?
The four of us, Krong and Eileen, probably wouldn't drop maps to the Valiant. I mean, come on now.
But that's the point. The point being, Charge should not be on the Papige Peninsula. They shouldn't.
Okay, wait. Let's move up though. Are we agreed that there's a rough tier with like Gladiator, Spark, Defiant, Rain as well? Or maybe Boston sneaks in there too.
I'd put Soul in there as well. I think
you
there's
put Soul in that. No. I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I think Soul is a tier above those teams.
You don't even watch Soul, Matt.
No way, dude. They are in that tier of the.
I had 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I had like 9, 10, 11. I had 5 teams in a tier break, so that would have included 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that would have been 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 all in one tier.
Yeah. I disagree.
I don't think Soul's as bad as those other teams.
So good.
No, I don't. I don't think that they're. I don't think they're that. I don't think they're that good. What I think is Gladiator, Spark, Toronto, and Atlanta have just not proven anything so far this season, really. Like Spark might be on a bit of a come up, but at least
out with the Marvel fucking off tank here in the fucking.
The Dynasty has done stuff.
Some form of incompetence. While Dynasty have been relatively stable.
They've been actually competent. Like they had really close series.
Well, that's why they should be at the top of it. But in return,
they're at the top.
Also, they will also just do random Soul shit. Like what they did versus Hunters.
You're saying that Soul Dynasty, they find themselves being the smartest ones in the room.
Come on.
And they're trying to get out of the room.
Soul Dynasty lost to the Philly Fusion.
That was a very close game. Very close.
They fucking beat up on Guangzhou, who we sent to the island. New York,
Valiant,
and their bags to the island, and then the Valiant.
Then their Hunters match was not good. The Hunters match wasn't very good.
The only 2 competent teams they played.
Like, the Dynasty, I told you guys, this team is fundamentally broken. I told you in the preseason power rankings, this team, there is an energy. There is an energy in the room for Dynasty. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because of the light refracting through Gesture's diamonds that are all adorned throughout his body, but there is a fundamental disconnect.
No, that's fair enough. Somewhere. Their strength of schedule was extremely easy.
Actually, that
is fair. That's fair. How the hell have we got
I can't believe you just look at results like that, Matt. Like, I'm actually boomed that instead you just provide, like, why some players are good or bad. Like, no one has even mentioned to you in this entire discussion. And the reason that Soul Dynasty, like, should be in that tier break is because 2U has underperformed relative to his teammates, and the Soul Dynasty have suffered as a team.
It's not just 2U though. I think their whole tank line is looking kind of odd. I don't think their rotations are good.
There's no way they would have been in this tier break if they had a better off tank.
Did you watch Soul last year? Did you watch Soul last year?
I mean,
like they have the same tanks.
That was also a problem with their off tank, though. That was the same problem with their off tank, with Marvel playing off tank.
Like Johnny's acting like we need to watch more footage on this team. It's the exact same fucking team with the exact same problem.
Let's move on from the Soul fucking quagmire. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck there forever.
I'm booming myself.
The Washington Justice is 4-0 in the regular season right now, right? They have 4 league points, and they're in 8th.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
That's pretty fucking low down.
Well, I want you to think about yourself. I want you to think for a second.
They should be fucking happy they're not in there with Soul Dynasty.
They've only beaten one good team, and it was Dallas, and it was when Dallas was looking their absolute weakest, probably.
Who else did the Washington Justice beat? What was their strength of schedule?
They have beaten Titans, who they lost a match to.
New York.
Yeah.
Wait, we're talking about justice. We're talking about justice, Matt. Are you just screaming names into the void?
It seems like every team we look at that has a good record has conventionally played New York, Guangzhou.
They've dropped maps to Titans and they've dropped maps to Boston. Back when Boston was looking abysmal, abysmal, and then they beat Defiant, which is like,
Yeah.
And then they lost to May.
I think that's. I feel pretty good about the power rankings though as well.
Yeah.
They're all going to get boomed because as we go into the June joust, shit's going to get flipped on his head. And who the hell knows who's going to win? Toronto Defiant are going to win the next championship.
Who's going to be the MVP?
Two use the MVP
off.
for the Toronto Defiant. He gets.
But that would be what Dynasty does. Dynasty would just fucking do weird shit, and then they pop off, and Jester's going to be playing DPS, and they're just going to win. Like
they send Michelle
the
back
Dynasty
over.
are going to get 2 wins next stage. They're going to beat New York at the beginning. They're going to beat Guangzhou at the end, and they're going to lose to both Shanghai and Chengdu in the middle, and that's going to be their stage.
Well, now it is time for the most important segment. It is Bren's Player of the Week, presented by T-Mobile.
Oh, Pog.
And I'm going to be honest with you, because it's Bren's Player of the Week, I forgot to get somebody this week, so I'm gonna hand over the responsibility because I can do that because I'm the host. And this time it's Avast's Player of the Week, presented by T-Mobile.
Okay.
And
you have Player of the Week.
You have a few seconds to think of who you want to give this to. Doesn't necessarily have to be the best player of the entire week. Sometimes it's like someone you want to give credit to, who you think.
I've already picked my player. I think it's like the player that literally just has to be by default the player. It has to be Fearless.
Fuck. Didn't we give it to him last week as well?
Did we give it to him last week?
I think he's actually farming awards right now at the beginning of the season.
If we gave it to him last week, I have a second player. I have a backup player.
Did we? Do you know, Kurt? Did we give it to Fearless? I don't remember.
I don't know.
I think
I
actually
give it to a player.
Who's your backup player? Let's give it to 2.
My backup player is Doha because this is the first time that Doha has actually lived up. Well, not the first time, but I think it's the time that he's finally lived up to that huge Element Mystic expectation that he came into the league with. And he was also so incredibly flexible. Like he played Genji at one point in Gibraltar, and he actually helped save the map on Genji. Like he legitimately looked really, really good. And his Sombra was like definitely the best Sombra in the league. He's living up. So I think it has to be Doha because also he survived the absolute fucking beatdown that was the Dallas Fuel Season 3. And like just that whole experience of watching them get ripped apart and, everyone's mad, everyone's pissed. And, suddenly, Paintbrush is his main support. And he's like, what the fuck's happening? So like this is the one. I think Doha should be the player of the week.
Okay. Doha is
my player of the week would have been not a player.
Askers?
No, I was going to get
any Askers?
Go on then, Matt. Who would your player of the week be?
The University of Hawaii for being able to host the thing to play.
You are an unmitigated shill.
And that place looks fucking awesome. You see the commercials for that place? It looks fucking sick.
You are the kind of person who watches commercials and then just buys the thing that's on the commercial, aren't you?
Yeah.
No, I mean, shout out to them. They did make a cool event happen. I mean, shout out to the whole Overwatch League technical team as well. That shit is crazy what they, like, even the ambition to go for something like that. I think Matt's frozen. Either that or he has the dumbest face in the world.
That's just his normal face.
No,
my
it's
camera's
fine.
moving.
You gave credit to the technical team right as you turn into a robot. It was incredible.
I've just thought who I would have given it to as well, and I know there's no Askers, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyway.
Okay, sure.
It's Yaki is who I would have given it to, I think, because he really is like such a fucking enormous difference maker for the Florida Mayhem, and he shit on my head when I played a Pharaoh 1v1 against him.
Oh, it's true.
And he
because he stopped throwing.
Yeah, I mean,
the
literally,
last one he just threw.
As soon as you put $10,000 on the line, apparently that's like an incentive, and
how
so
does
people
that
start trying.
work? By the way, does he get that money, or is that going to like the team, or like how is that money working? He's literally just getting a free $10,000.
It was just an appearance fee. He just turned up, and they were like,
"Just a free 10K."
No, if you really think about it,
that's the freest money ever in the history of money.
If you really think about it, the reason
little squigglies on your head.
The reason that the league puts money on these kind of things is to make it like fun for the players, right? Like it doesn't feel like an obligation. It's like something that they, they're like, oh, it's worth my time. So essentially this was just Yaki's appearance fee. They put the price of $10,000 to get Yaki to turn up and agree to 1v1 me. That's an outrageous amount of money.
How hard were you trying?
I can tell you I was practicing against 4.5k Farah players that play in tier 3, and I was beating them. Well, I wasn't beating them every time, but I think I lost like one or
You were
no, I think
I
lost 2 games and I won like 5 against like 4.5k Farah players, and this was, I mean, I just couldn't do anything. I literally just couldn't do a thing. Like every time I moved, he was just holding his rockets until I was predictable, and then shooting me and hit me every time. Like he shot so much more slowly than everyone else.
Like you were playing the ground, and I'm just like, what? Like, did you choke in like movement rather than aim? Like, well, I don't understand.
Oh, whenever he would fly down to the health pack, it killed me.
The time that when I died on the ground as well was because I was trying to get a health pack and I ran into the tree. Because health packs were enabled, and so I was like, okay, he hasn't been playing this mode. Maybe I can sneak a health pack away. But he wasn't. The other thing as well was when I was playing against these other Farah players, they were shooting their rockets much more predictably, and so they were reloading really predictably as well. And when you reload, you can dip down and get the health kit. So I was trying to wait for him to reload, but because he was shooting his rockets so slowly, if I had waited for him to reload, I would already be dead because he was killing me with a single clip. So I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to have to rush and get this health kit. And then I just beefed my movement, ran into a tree and died. So the entire thing was just a clusterfuck. There was no way of winning. Literally no chance in any world was I going to win that.
On another player of the week candidate would have been Danny Lim for beating our former 2 pro players in predictions for the entire stage by flipping coins. Are we going to
have just a team of the week? Are we going to have a team of people that we announce?
Bren's team of the week. Yeah, Bren's team of the week. A random selection of entities and people.
My candidate is OG for winning on that ocean duo thing.
What was that? Is that a famous American game, by the way, or Korean game?
Chicken fight? Yeah, no, it's American. I mean, I don't know if it's international, but it's very. I've known about it since I was.
I've only seen it in like American Pie, like when there's like hot high school or college girls like on people's shoulders and like. And it's like drinks and alcohol flowing.
Is it essentially just an excuse to get normally a girl in a bikini to sit on your shoulders? Is that just an American frat boy thing that they've come up with?
I mean, we live in a modern America, so I don't know if that's really the case, but I don't know. But, theoretically, if one were to answer from a different perspective, a more ooga booga perspective, one would say yes. One would say yes, potentially. So.
I feel like that was a very frat boy game. But yeah, that was OG. Yaki's kind of built as well. Like he's got that, he's lean, OG had a very solid base, and then Yaki's got the lean reach.
It kind of reminded me of like when a rhino gets cleaned by like, I think like marmosets or something, when like they come over and they like clean all the ticks and shit. And that's like Yaki. He's like a lean predator. And OG's the rhino driving that combo.
right, yeah. And they have a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that is a totally ridiculous episode. And we're just in time to get started with the June Jas. I guess by the time we do our next episode, we'll have details of like hero pools. Maybe they'll have drawn them, and we'll have some more stuff to go on as well. That'll be cool. Yeah, when is that first live Chinese game as well? Is that during this tournament?
Yes, I believe it's like week 3, I think.
Okay, cool. So it won't be something we're talking about next week, but it'll be something at some point that we'll bring.
It'll actually be awesome to get like pictures and like footage of that and actually see what it's like.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, China's super hype on Owl, and they never got any events with the cool homestands we did last year. So
those would have been mental. They would have absolutely.
Oh, they would have been fucking crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to have another episode coming at you as well. And if we can be asked to get around to it, we're trying to launch some interview series. I keep saying it every time in the hopes that that'll incentivize us to actually get around to organizing that. But I guess that's just me getting off my fat ass and organizing it. So I'll try and hold myself accountable.
Yeah, you got to go if you go from wide show to slim show, you'll start scheduling these, get back in shape.
Yeah, okay. Or
back
not.
In shape.
Or not. So,
shape.
We'll see you next week.
Interviews.
Catch you then.